Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. I'm here with my very special guest and my partner in, well, I wouldn't say crime because that's not the case, but yeah, I'm here with Thaddeus, and thank you very much, Thaddeus, for joining me. So yeah, and yeah, yeah, guys, it's been a while. I have been very busy with research, and we are streaming. So guys, thank you all, and please let me know in the chat if my audio is coming through correctly. Yeah, so just drop me a 1 in the comments if we have proper audio because YouTube prevented me from streaming previously. And we have, okay, we are good to go. Excellent stuff. Excellent. Thank you guys. I was really worried. So guys, I have been absent for a little while and I have been doing some heavy research. I've been spending a lot of time and I'm going to be introducing a completely different angle on atheism. This was precipitated by a discussion that I had on a different channel where someone had a guest who was making assertions that were utterly baseless. I got in the chat and I started to present facts as I know them, well researched facts, as well as asking for evidence. And unfortunately, this was simply laughed aside, or dismissed. And I couldn't believe the level of, I don't know, just this lack of concern for actual factual inquiry that I was facing, and I was very upset. And I decided to, for the last 2 years, I've been collecting a lot of information on atheism, and I thought that I need to do something about this. So no, I was doing a lot of research. Hello, villainous. Thank you. No, I was doing a lot of research. Guys, this takes weeks. You have no idea how much time goes into research. You have no idea the hours and hours. Jean Shah, Calixtus, Geerke. Welkom alle. Goed om jullie hier te zien. Ken Johnston, Judith Abraham, Daduza. Welcome, guys. Reason, anything from you? You've seen the slides. What do you think? Can't hear Thaddeus. Hold on. Thaddeus, you have no audio. Hold on. Why is that? This should not be the case. Now, it shows me that audio is going through perfect. I am... Okay, hold on, Thaddeus. I'm going to change your audio. So, hold on, guys. So, you cannot hear Thaddeus. Okay? I'm going to change it over to standard output. Okay, Thaddeus, speak, please.
Hello, can you hear me now, audience?
Guys, drop a 1 if you can hear Thaddeus. I do apologize for that, but you are super, super faint. That should not be the case.
Oh, it looks like it is better now. We're getting lots of ones.
Okay, I
So,
changed you from your direct input. I changed you from your Skype input to the system output. So that's very strange. Because
yeah, you'd think it would be the same, but
I have no idea why. No, because it was set up correctly, guys. I promise I set this up correctly. It shows everything is 100%. Okay, Thaddeus, my apologies. So
all
welcome,
right. So,
Thaddeus, and
so
please
yeah,
give us your
to
view. Yeah.
go back here, I've been doing Christian apologetics for a long time. I've been interacting with atheists and atheism for a long time. And yet, the vast majority of what you're going to see on the presentation today is not anything that I had seen before. It's kind of the untold history of atheism. We're told that, you know, the world would be a utopia if we could just get rid of religion, then everyone would get along because the only thing people ever fight about, apparently, is religion. But when we look at the history of atheism, we see history of violence, history of violent attempts to suppress religion.
And that is true. So, guys, we're going to have a look at a different take on atheism. We're going to go into its history. We're going to go very deep into the history. We will be going back, in this case, to the 18th century. And we're going to look now. There is a lot of history out there. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of bad information out there, right? I have a huge archive. I'll be releasing an archive. It's probably up to 100 books by now. I'm still busy going through them and indexing. I use professional indexing software to go through my archive, which is now about 1,500 books. Not everything is yet in my public archive. Thaddeus does know some of the materials that I work with, and these are some of the best sources available. These are solid factual sources. And okay, let's just jump over, guys. Let's begin. So this is about murder in the name of reason, right? This is when, and also we're going to be discussing atheism in general. We're going to be doing a little bit of an overview, and then we're going to talk about the time when atheists persecuted Christians, and then we will look at how atheists have persecuted everybody else. And yes, of course, atheists have lots of defenses against this stuff. You know, they weren't real Muslims, you know, we know that, you know, but we're going to examine that, and we're going to really have a look at how credible are these claims. So yeah, evidence is irrelevant, it's utopia and that. So guys, so we're going to talk about murder in the name of reason, when atheists persecuted Christians, and we're going to speak about atheists, socialists, and the cult of reason, because you need to understand, and we will discover through the course of the series that I'm doing. I've already finished 2 sets of presentations. I've got over 100 pages already, and I've got others in the works. Atheism is legally a religion. Socialism is and was founded as a religion. It is a religion. Understand that. And yeah, and well, let's go, and we will get there. So guys, I'm going to give you this little story. Let's start with a story. So this story is called The Congress Women, right? The story is called The Congress Women. That's the name of it. It's a play, but it's a play discussing events of the day. It's a play discussing the attitudes and the claims. And the women of the city, wearing beards and dressed in men's clothing, come to the assembly and by a majority vote pass a resolution transferring all power in the state to women. They use this power to introduce a series of measures which are expounded in a dialogue between the leader of the women and her husband. Here are several quotations. Compulsory universal property is what I propose. Across the board economic equality. So, to fill those fissures that scar our society's face. No more division between rich and poor. We will wear the same clothes. We will share the same food. Now, we will find that this idea does literally crop up in, oh God, we're going to get there. My initial move will be to communalize land. So this is, in other words, appropriation of land. No private property. And money. Oh God, we're going to take your money and all other property. But take the landless man who's invisibly wealthy because he hides his silver and gold in his pockets. What about him? Oh, he will deposit all of his money in the fund. I will knock out the walls and remodel the city into one big happy household where all can come and go as they choose. I am pooling the women. I am creating a public hoard for the use of every man who wishes to take them to bed and make babies. A system like this requires a pretty wise father to know his own children. But why does he need to? Age is the new criterion. Children will henceforth trace their descent from all men who maybe fathered them. Who's going to work the land and produce the food? The slaves. The slaves will work the land and produce the food. This leaves you just one civic function. When the shades of night draw on, slip sleekly down to dinner. And Marx echoes all of this stuff. We'll get to that. But the state is not going to stint. It is not going to be cheap. In other words, we're going to open the coffers for you, right? Its hand is full and open. The state's heart is large. It will stuff its menfolk free of charge. Then issue them torches when dinner's done, and send them out to hunt for fun. The question is, what year was this written? When was this written? If you guys, in the comments, please, give me a clue. When was this written? Guys, please just drop a date. Give us a rough date. Any date will be fine. Just give us a date. I'll take a couple, and then we will reveal all. Thaddeus, what did you think when you first heard this? Your comments.
Yeah, so when I first heard this, I thought for sure that this was written during the communist revolution, perhaps early 20th century, late 19th century, something along those lines.
Yeah, agreed. That you did. So, guys, I see, what do we have here? We have people saying 500, okay, 1900s. Okay, so the 500 BC is the closest. This is Athens in 392 BC. So this is Athens, 392 BC. And this is a play by Aristophanes. This is a play by Aristophanes called The Congress Women. And this, he is teaching people, he is making fun of, satirizing attitudes, ideas, and behaviors that were common in Athens at that time. So this is from nearly 2,400, it's over 2,400 years ago. So these comments, this play is from 2,400 years ago. Thaddeus, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising for sure. Just goes to show that although we tend to look back on the ancient world and think that people are way different back then, it doesn't really seem to be the case when you really honestly look at things. You know, people throughout history, yes, they've had access to different technology. We have access to more technology, more education, but the fundamental nature of human beings really hasn't changed any.
Yeah, Anakatana is right. We went backwards. Atheism is taking us back to paganism. This is taking us back to the time of the pagan Greeks. We are literally rehashing. Tradition are solutions to problems that society has faced. Western tradition are solutions to societal problems. When you remove those traditions, when you remove those values, the problems come back. We are now moving back towards paganism. And you do need to understand that atheism is, well, paganism, socialism, yeah, we're going to learn a great deal. So Marxism is a rehash of a very old spirit, correct, villainous? Let's continue. Socialism, atheism. Now, socialism and atheism are both religious and both political. So technically, you're dealing with a political religion. You may have heard of another political religion that I've spoken about a lot. Now, socialism was created to be a religion, a counterfeit Christianity. Please understand this is a fact. Socialism was created as, or shall we say modern socialism. When I say modern, I mean 18th century. Right? Socialism goes back before that. I can go to the 15th century, I can do different discussions on the 15th century, but we can go back well prior to that. We can go back thousands of years. But understand, modern socialism is designed to be a counterfeit of Christianity. Technically, it is what you would call scientific Christianity. Secular humanism is atheist socialist religious doctrine. So secular humanism is atheist socialist religious doctrine. Atheism is religious. It is an integral part of socialism and humanism. Atheism and humanism are religions as per the US Supreme Court. So, yes, Dashing Rogue, so Marxist socialism is modern. Technically, yes, that would be modern socialism. Socialists don't agree. They do contradict each other, but there are certain tendencies and trends, and there are certain underlying fundamental things. Thaddeus, your thoughts before I continue?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the material, but there is a lot of stuff that will surprise people. I mean, this court ruling that humanism is a religion and entitled to the same protections as any other religion was certainly surprising to me. And it looks like Gospel Edge knows one of the things that we'll be discussing.
Yeah, I've been putting up some community posts. Atheism and secular humanism were born in blood and violence. You need to understand, they are born in blood and violence. There is credible, actually very strong, irrefutable evidence, scientific evidence, that Western democratic governments are far safer, far better, far less violent, far less genocidal than socialist governments. This is not the topic of today's discussion, but believe me, I have the evidence and I will be getting to all of that. Now, atheist humanism and atheist socialism were founded and promoted by people who are absolutely, positively, bat poop, crazy utopian totalitarians. You're going to be surprised. Atheism and humanism are political, proselytizing religions like Islam. We're going to be covering all of this, so I understand I'm making some fun claims here. And atheism and humanism in government is always dysfunctional, irrational, and genocidal. Any comment before I continue, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, it may not seem, there might not seem like there'd be a direct connection between atheism and genocide, but history has proven otherwise. And I think that it's because when you eliminate the principle that a human being has value, then there's nothing to stop you from eliminating your political opponents.
Fair. Atheism is, like humanism, socialism are collectives, right? Christianity brought the dignity of man, brought the concept of the dignity of man to the fore. Man as an individual has political rights. Now, this is obviously enshrined within the US Constitution. This idea was really, it reached its pinnacle within the US Constitution, within the US form of government. However, atheism speaks of equality. Now, understand, they are speaking in propagandistic language. It is not equality, it's the abolition of hierarchy. You're all the same. In other words, you are interchangeable parts. You are just a widget. You're a widget like any other widget. You're all the same. It doesn't produce individuality, it produces sameness. So it erases. And Villeneuve says, you mean a religion that stole bits of Christianity to make it seem legitimate? This has never happened before. No, never happened. So, credit to Cogito Ergo. Thank you for putting this now. Atheists substitute themselves in God's place. It's man in the image of man. Right? Within Christian doctrine, we have man in the image of God, in the Imago Dei, but now we have man in the image of man. You'll find this is common within socialist traditions, right? Atheism is a second-hand religion because all of its beliefs are derived from theism. Now, okay, I understand. Atheism is not a belief. Atheism is the lack of belief, except that all of these beliefs they don't have are better than your Christian beliefs, right? All those beliefs that they don't possess are better than your beliefs. So, okay, fine. Now, atheism exists to negate theism, specifically Christianity. However, you cannot be derived from something yet claim no association with it. It is merely a copy, and then a corruption of it, or an inversion of it. So they claim a lack of belief using the passive voice, a lack of belief. But the active voice for lack of belief is the belief that there is no God. You need a positive belief. You can't be a negative belief. You need some kind of positive belief. So atheism tries to use cheap grammar tricks to make itself. Thaddeus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is my experience with atheism, and why I grew bored with talking to atheists, is that 90% of the time there was no real conversation. It was just, I don't have any beliefs, so I win by default. That as long as I can say there's a 1% chance that your belief is false, that means you shouldn't believe what you believe, and you should be an atheist. And they very, very rarely provide any positive reason to be an atheist. It's always, you shouldn't be a Christian because of X. And as I tell my Muslim friends, you can't get to a religion by eliminating other religions. You know, the Muslim says, as you shouldn't be a Christian for reason X, you should be a Muslim. The atheist says you shouldn't be a Christian for reason Y, you should be an atheist. And they're both kind of using the same arguments, and they want me to come to a different conclusion. And the problem with both of them is they're not providing any positive reason to believe what they believe.
Yeah. Also, to say that I have a lack of belief, right now I have a lack of need of food. Doesn't mean I don't get hungry. Doesn't mean I don't have preferences for foods I don't like. It just means right now I'm not thinking about it. That is a mental state, a mental condition, an emotional condition, right? That holds no values. So, but the moment that you have a position that you have arguments for, then you have a position, then you have an ideology that you are defending. And of course, atheists will defend their position. But of course, if they're just atheists because they're not thinking about theism right now, then they have no reasons for what they believe either. So there's this heavy logical contradictions there. Now, Dawkins tried to change the name from atheists to brights because, yeah, they are atheists. They are anti-theists. They're not theists. The opposite of, right? Of course, brights, we could think brights, son of light, you name it. We'll continue. Now, Christianity is not a belief. Christianity is, right, it's the lack of belief. Right? As you all know, Christianity is just a lack of belief. Thank you, Kitsune. Much appreciated. Or it's determinist. In other words, this whole idea of determinism, which is one of the prime underpinning philosophies of atheism, one of the many, of course, because they can't agree, just like in Islam, that, basically the benzene molecule that's in your bloodstream is forcing you to think this way because it's completely, there's no way to control it. You are going to believe this anyway because the hydrogen molecule got you to do this. Okay, so it's deterministic.
Yeah,
now, if it's deterministic, then I have no control of it. But why is it that 70% of the people in the world have deterministically decided to be religious?
Well, it's because the people before them were religious, and then the people before them, and don't bother going back and thinking about what the original source of this was. Just say that it came from someone else, and you're good.
Right. Now, atheists love to quote Carl Sagan, and Carl Sagan obviously has this thing, the only thing that exists is the universe and matter. But why do they never send this quote? An atheist is someone who is certain that God does not exist, or someone who has someone who has compelling evidence against the existence of God. But Carl Sagan tells us, I know of no such compelling evidence. God can be relegated to remote times and places and to ultimate causes. We would have to know a great deal more about the universe than we do know to be sure that no such God exists. So why have atheists never given us this quote, but only the quote that all that exists is matter? Which is a materialist view. Your thoughts, that is.
Yeah, good question. Selective use of evidence.
Yeah, so Carl Sagan. So guys, are you going to throw Carl Sagan under the bus? Carl Sagan is not my scholar.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they'll say. He had some right ideas, but we don't agree with all his ideas.
Yeah, he's not a real Muslim. So yeah, okay, so moving on. So that's Carl Sagan. Now, leftist failure and denial. So now Thomas Sowell, the whole political vision of the left, including socialism, has failed by every test in countries all around the world. But this has only led leftist intellectuals to evade and denigrate empirical evidence. And this is what I discovered the hard way myself. When the world fails to conform to their vision, then it seems obvious to the ideologues that it is the world that is wrong, not that their vision is uninformed or unrealistic. Carl Sagan is naive.
That's better. That's what we gotta say now.
Right. So now, whatever you do, crush the loathsome thing. Now, please understand, usually this is translated as crush the infamous thing. It seems that the more accurate would be the loathsome thing, the horrible, ugly thing. So whatever you do, crush the loathsome thing and love those who love you. I'm just going to bring my mic a bit closer. This is said by Voltaire. This is the French philosopher and author here. All right. Now let's have a look at what Jesus has to say. Thaddeus, if you can read that for us.
Jesus said, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that.
Yeah, very strong contrast. Your thoughts on that, Thaddeus? So Voltaire said, crush the loathsome thing. We'll get into that. And just love those who love you. Of course, this leaves open, what do you do with those you hate?
Well, we'll get to see what the atheist regimes have done with those who they hate as we move on.
Yeah.
But that's not a very productive way to look at the world.
Yeah.
If atheism is true, then it makes perfect sense. But it's not going to lead to a utopian society by any means.
Yeah. But also notice, this is the same as Allah. Allah only loves those who love him. Allah teaches to only love those. So, I don't know, was he a Muslim?
Was Voltaire? I don't think so. But was Allah a Muslim? Not even sure about that.
But notice the similarities and parallels. You're going to see, from socialists, you're going to see great parallels with Islam. Right, so crush the superstition of Christianity. So his war cry was écrasez la infâme. Okay, the French quotation from Voltaire. This is Merriam-Webster. A woke dictionary. But notice it says here, crush the loathsome thing. For those who are going to tell me, but it's the infamous thing. Okay, well, someone write to Merriam-Webster and tell them they're wrong. And he was referring to the Roman Catholic Church. And in wider, he was also referring to Christianity in general. Now, Voltaire's comments sound like the basic socialist idea we have the oppressor pay. Correct. But that's Marxism. It's just, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So was it Marx Engels that equated human life to that of cattle? I can't remember offhand. So guys, so that's Voltaire. Now let's have a look at Voltaire. Crush the loathsome thing. The battle cry of Voltaire was a fiery expression of his love of men, of liberty, of enlightenment, and of progress. Okay, so that was an expression of his love of men. And the thing in question is superstition, meaning Christianity. So Voltaire was against religion, specifically the Catholic Church. Now, if you read his writings, Voltaire was very, very anti-Jewish too. Right. And I did remove a reference, but there's another guy, very well known in the Protestant movement, that was also very much like Voltaire, that also didn't like him some Jews. Okay, so let's just say that these ideas floated around a little bit. The language above, though, is whitewashing and propaganda. And we're going to see as we go through this how vicious, how violent, and how bloody the implementation of Voltaire's love of man, liberty, and enlightenment progress was. Now, Voltaire, oddly enough, and these guys contradict themselves left and right. They make no sense. You'll find that the atheist ideas, and these are all atheists, right? Okay, he's a deist. Now, whatever. You'll find that the ideas are all incoherent babble. Now, he was a deist, apparently. Now, a deist is not the same as a theist. Technically, you got a guy who believes there was a creator, but he went off, had lunch, and fell asleep and hasn't come back. So he's missing in action, right? He's on leave, and we don't know when he's coming back. So he's missing, right? He's gone AWOL. That's the idea of the deist. Now, he saw godlessness, though, as a weakening the sacred bonds of society, writing. So he said that if a society becomes godless, the sacred bonds of society will shatter, society will become unstable. But he did say if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. And we have to ask ourselves, what kind of God is he referring to? Because I don't think he's referring to Yahweh. What kind of God? In other words, do we need to create a fake God that serves our purpose? Your thoughts, that is.
Yeah, I not to give it away, but I imagine the audience is probably already guessing the answer here. And of course, when we invent a God, we invent a God in our own image, or we just flat out say that we are our own God. We elevate ourselves to the status of God, and we make our own moral choices based on whatever the heck we feel like.
Fair enough. And Truth Hurt says deism is self-refuting, because if God never revealed himself, then how do you as a deist know he's there? And that's a fair point. Okay, so this is what Voltaire... Now, one thing I've noticed is that the common quotes that people get are usually like 4 words. Like the guy said, the sky hurts my feelings. But you're like, okay, that's a nice quote. That's great. But when you actually realize it's actually usually an extract from a much longer piece, which tells you much more. So if you go back to the original... He says here, the French people will not fall for fables. They no longer want to solicit of Rome those vain pardons it sells. The masks have been torn from the charlatans, that's the priests, right? Enough have been damned because of an apple. I've always esteemed the man, Jesus, right, for his touching and sublime morality. His successors have poorly imitated him. In his name they've persecuted, in his name at the 2 ends of the earth. His cross in hand, these cruel men for 13 centuries have borne flames and wars. Placing the people under their authority means betraying them, means being a false friend. So placing people under the authority of the church means betraying them and means being a false friend. These are ideas that atheists speak today. Christianity has caused wars. The church is trying to get you under the authority. The Christianity has done nothing but violence. These ideas go back to the 17th, 18th century. They're nothing new. And notice every evil sermon. Well, and instead of flattering superstition, be eloquent and crush the loathsome thing. Now, what's interesting is I got this on Marxists.org. They were the only source where I could find this whole poem translated, this whole speech translated.
Well, we all know that Voltaire had nothing to do with communism or socialism or anything, and they're just misappropriating him.
Yeah, well, this is on Marxists.org, okay? So, understand, yeah, so he wasn't, okay. Now, superstition, what is superstition, right? Now, it's a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, or trust in magic or chance, or a false conception of causation. Like men can be women, or babies are born, sperm comes from between the spine and the feet, or something, between the ears and the big toe, whatever. An irrational attitude of mind towards the supernatural, nature or God resulting from superstition, or a notion maintained despite evidence to the contrary, like socialism works. We're going to get it right this time. A belief that is not based on human reason or scientific knowledge, and we're going to find a lot of that. Oh, we're going to find a lot of that. And all of these, now, and we will show this, I will go into detail, these can be ascribed to atheist humanists and socialists. Believe me, we will do that. All right. So, Churchill, Madison, Lincoln. Very quickly, I'm going to run over this. Churchill said socialism is the philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, right? Socialism is the equal sharing of miseries, right? Whereas capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. Hey, Thunderous. And then, of course, you've got James Madison, okay, and Abraham Lincoln, who, as everyone knows, was a vampire hunter. They tell us that property is the fruit of labor. Property is desirable. It's a positive good in the world, right? Because if someone can become rich, it shows that others may become rich. And that's the American dream. People can find success. So, now guys, I'm going to show you some poem. I'm going to show you some poetry. And I'd like you to tell me who wrote the poetry. Okay? And so, let me go back here. Worlds I would destroy forever, since I can create no world. Since my call, they notice never. No one hears my call. Coursing dumb in magic whirl. Oh boy, I'm doing some crazy magic. Maybe occult magic, who knows. Feelings, 1836, but I would destroy worlds forever. I'm an angry man. Thus, heaven I have forfeited. I know it full well. My soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell. So guys, who do you think wrote these poems? Come on, come on, come on. Someone drop a name. Who do you think wrote this? How so? I plunge without fail my blood-black saber into your soul. That art God neither wants nor wists. It leaps to the brain from hell's black mists. Till heart is bewitched, till sense is real. With Satan I have struck my deal. He chalks the signs, beats time for me. I play the death march, fast and free. The Fiddler, 1837. Who do you think wrote this? And Lou Lasher. Oh God, you get the golden prize, dude. Welcome to Karl Marx. Satanist? That is.
Yeah, I mean, when you read these things, since they're part of the presentation, I of course knew that they were one of the figures that you'd be talking about. But I said, if I just saw these without knowing that context, I would say for sure that these were written by some occultist figure.
Yeah, written by some occultist figure. Now look, guys, I have a friend, obviously this is now just simply me giving you an anecdote. I have a friend who used to work in Hollywood on movies. He's a special effects guy, a good friend of mine. And he told me that many of these atheists in Hollywood are Satanists. And everyone knows that the great Satanist, what was his name? Aaron Ra, came out as a full-blown Satanist recently. Right? So, yeah. So, you must understand, though, that if you look at the secular humanist philosophy and you compare it with some of the writings of the Church of Satan, for instance, their aims, their whole secular humanist philosophy, you will find overlaps. You will find overlap. Now, Gramsci. Any comments from you before I go on, Thaddeus?
Nope.
Yeah. So Gramsci, cultural Marxist architect. So this is the guy that is responsible for intersectionality and cultural Marxism. Let's see what he says. Socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media by transforming the consciousness of society. Sounds like they're trying to control society. It sounds like they're trying to program people. Emmanuel Shahid, hey, welcome, buddy. Now, that's Antonio Gramsci, and he was a humanist. He was also a Marxist socialist. In fact, he was a humanist Marxist, humanist socialist Marxist, whatever, you take your pick. Now, Gramsci's theories underpin intersectionality and cultural Marxism. He's the guy, he's the architect of this whole idea. It works to dismantle existing culture by ideological subversion and opposition. So, understand, socialism, along with its philosophies, are designed to subvert and oppose. There's someone called the opposer in the Bible. Do you know who that was, Thaddeus?
Yeah, that might be Satan.
Oh, good grief, I knew the name. It was on the tip of my tongue. So they are challenging, now notice, they want to challenge the legitimacy of existing institutions like family, religion, and political power. The legitimacy of family, the family is illegitimate. Oh my golly, that's weird. Okay. Now, Saul Alinsky describes the modus operandi in Rules for Radicals. So those who want to change the world from what it is to what they believe it should be. So this is a moral imperative for them. They don't like the world, they want to change it. Right, they don't like what there is. So anyway, so he says now the Rules for Radicals written for the have-nots on how to take it away, right? Take power away for themselves, right? So now, let's have a look. Now, of course, you've got this is he has the prison notebooks. He's a humanist reconstruction of Marxism. So he was in prison too, like a certain Mr. Hitler. So yeah, he spent time in prison and he wrote a bunch of books, and he's a humanist Marxist, right? So. Now, let's have a look at the Confession of Commie Faith. Give a little thought to the Communist Confession of Faith. I think we would do best to abandon the catechetical form and call the thing Communist Manifesto. This is Engels written to Marx on 24th November 1847. So did you know that the Communist Manifesto was originally called the Communist Confession of Faith? Why?
I had no idea.
Because it was a religion. Because socialism is a religion. Communism is a religion. You need to understand this. And don't forget, these are atheists. These are hardcore atheists. Right? The Communist Confession of Faith. So, catechetical, what does that mean? Okay, it's religious instruction given in preparation for Christian baptism or confirmation. Religious teaching by means of questions and answers. What do you take away from this, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty clear that the founders of the socialist communist movement saw themselves as replacing Christianity. And they didn't say that they were, getting rid of religion per se. They said they were creating a new religion. They were putting something else in its place. And that quote from the previous slide, where it's like, we need to infiltrate the universities and the schools and the politics. Well, isn't that exactly what we see has happened? That they've targeted the media, they've targeted the schools. Teach the kids from an early age that everyone is equal, that you can be whatever you want to be.
Which is a satanic credo as well.
Right, and we protect the school from any influence by the church. You get rid of any sort of moral values by getting rid of the church. If someone wants to have moral values in school, they'll say, you can't teach your religion in our school.
Well, but socialist, atheist, humanist is a religion. So they're teaching their religion. It's become a de facto state-endorsed religion.
Yeah, and they're absolutely replacing moral values. I mean, you can't be devoid of moral values. They just replace it with different values.
Values, correct.
This value of you're not allowed to question anyone. You're not allowed to say that someone else is wrong. Yeah. Unless, of course, you're telling us that what we believe is wrong. Then you're wrong.
Yeah. So this is now James Lindsay. So he says that Marxist, now he's probably the best known expert. He's the top expert on Gramsci and cultural Marxism today. And he writes, Marxist communism is not an extension or logical conclusion of liberalism. It is a Gnostic mystery religion, made of an inversion of Christianity, retooled into a form of magical alchemy, passing itself off as the science. Now, this is 100% correct. Right? This is very much Gnostic. It is very much a ripoff of Christianity, and alchemy happens to be another Islamic term. It's another Islamic occult practice, right? Passing itself off as the science. I know of religion that has a lot of sciences, the religious sciences. Oh my gosh, it's Islam. They have a lot of religious sciences, and now you've got another religious science as well. That's fascinating, but we will get into all of this, okay? So that's James Lindsay, for those of you who don't know. And he's an atheist, by the way. As far as I know, he's an atheist. He's a hardcore atheist. So this is what he's telling us about Marxist religion. Now we look at, this is 1971, and we have a psychologist called Skinner. And he tells us that we can no longer afford freedom. At least you can't afford freedom. He can. That's different. He's one of the ruling people. But no freedom for you. And he said, we must design our culture to shape the behavior needed. I believe this is called mind control. Isn't this... atheists are always saying religion is designed to control.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like these guys, these atheist socialists, are very, very busy trying to control society, shape society, transform society. Right, and so let's have a look. This book was a bestseller, and he recommended abolition of the family unit. So he recommended destroying the family. So hold on, okay, we're going to see more about that. Now, science has enabled current moral and social degeneracy, which is scientific atheism and humanism at work. Now, his book was a bestseller in 1971. He argued that entrenched belief in free will and the moral autonomy of the individual, so you having the freedom to make your own choices within the realms of the law to maintain order, right? But having free will hinders the prospect of using scientific methods to modify behavior for the purpose of building a happier and better organized utopian society. Doesn't that just sound beautiful, Thaddeus? What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, it sounds wonderful. It always sounds wonderful. I mean, no one's going to say that things are going to not work out. But we're going to see in a minute that they have no basis for believing this. They just believe it blindly without evidence, or even in contradiction to the evidence.
So this is oppressive and this is totalitarian, because they need to remove your free will. They need to tell you what to do to build a perfect society. Now notice, he saw free will as a miraculous event. He believed science was opposed to any kind of miracles, because, you see, you don't have a soul, so you can't have a soul that is animated by the spark of life, the Holy Spirit, and therefore you have a mind that's independent of the matter, right? So therefore your thoughts are deterministic. They're just molecules banging together and you have these random thoughts, right? So because free will is miraculous, therefore you cannot have free will. And this is, your thoughts on that, Thaddeus?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, you can't blame him too much, right? He doesn't have any free will. So whatever he's saying, he was just determined to say that. So you can't fault him.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
he was just predetermined to believe that indeterminism.
yeah, so he thought that humans are not creative agents with the ability to make real choices and shape their own personality. We're just meat robots, and they can make us operate like machines. Right, and like Marxism here, his focus is on intentions, not outcomes. And philosophically, this is exactly like Islam's concept of niyat, of intention. The intention is there. They're not necessarily the outcomes.
It is a very interesting contradiction, though. To claim that people don't have free will and that they can be programmed, and then say, therefore, we need to program them the way we want. Doesn't that mean that you are having the free will to program them in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So now notice this is from the Communist Manifesto of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. Oh my God. But this guy was not a communist, Skinner was not a communist. He was an atheist, but a communist? Oh my, he wants exactly the same thing as the communists. He wants exactly the same thing as Karl Marx, the socialist. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital. Family is based on capital. Capitalism on private gain. In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeoisie. So if you have a proper family, you are the enemy. If you have a proper nuclear family unit, father, mother, child, you are the enemy. You're the bourgeoisie. The whole point of the communism, of the revolution, was to overthrow the bourgeoisie, was to wrest power from them, to destroy them. They must destroy you. Do you understand? Their whole aim is to destroy Western values and families. Your thoughts, Thaddeus, before I go on?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hauntingly familiar attack from just looking at contemporary culture. We're constantly told that if you believe in a traditional family, you are being prejudiced, you are being bigoted, that families come in all shapes and forms, and they're all equally valid. You have a family with 3 moms, that's fine. You have a family with 1 dad and 26 kids, that's perfectly normal.
With 15 different moms,
grandpa and children, okay, whatever. They're all equally valid. There's no better form of family. And, you can be totally biologically unrelated, and that's still a family. If you live together, you're a family.
Correct. So understand, this is Marxist. Let's have a look here. Marxist says, this bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed correlation of parent and child, becomes all the more disgusting, the more by the action of modern industry. All family ties among the proletarians are torn apart, their children transformed into articles of commerce and instruments of labor. The bourgeois sees in his wife a mere instrument of production. Marx clearly didn't have a high regard for family values. Right, and Mr. Skinner here wants to abolish the family, maybe because he's on board with the whole socialist ethos, right? So, yeah.
Now, I was just wondering if he was describing the elitist regime of France, or if he was describing Muslim men there. Right?
Yeah. Now, no proof, he says, but I'm right anyway. So Skinner opened his best-selling book by evoking fear that humans are on the verge of annihilating themselves through bad behavior, bad person, rapid population growth, nuclear weapons, and rampant pollution. But he admitted that his ideas were not scientifically proven. He admitted he couldn't prove them. He could not prove his ideas, but he's right anyway, and we need to enforce them because it is in the nature of scientific inquiry that the evidence should shift in favor of the second. So because I think I will be proven right in the future, you know what? We're going to do my thing now. Can't prove it, but shut up. We're going to do it anyway. So, atheist.
You got to go. You got to be rational and go where the evidence leads. Unless it doesn't lead to where you want, then you got to assume that the evidence will later be in your favor.
Yes, that's completely rational. He's got no proof, but atheism is built on evidence, right? Clearly he was a bad atheist. He wasn't a real Muslim, right? Because he didn't accept, because atheism, now notice, secular ideologies, you must understand, secular ideologies kill. This is now the claim religion causes war. And we're going to look at the source of that as well. We're going to get into all of that. But of course, we saw Voltaire, right? These are 1,763 wars by cause from 8,000 BC to 2000 AD. This is 10,000 years of warfare. Now, you'll notice here that all religious wars by all other religions except for Islam count for 3.8%. So all religions except Islam are 3.8% of all known wars. Now, for instance, within this book, this encyclopedia, which is some of the very best scholarship available, okay, historians and scholarship on the topic. This is 3 volumes, I believe. I have a set. You guys can get it from my archive. Links in the description, my full archive. I think there's one instance of the Peloponnesian Wars, which I think happened over 250 years. So there were hundreds of battles, hundreds of wars. Now, they decided to make that just one war. Now, if they'd made it into dozens and dozens and dozens, these statistics would shift even better in the favor of religion. Okay. Now, Islam is responsible for 3.2% of all wars on its own. All other religions are 3.8%. Islam classifies itself as a political system. Don't forget, it's a deen. Deen is a political system. Like Nazism, like communism, like fascism, it is a political system. So it's a political religion. And then government secular wars, 93% of all wars are. It's Rick Soldier of God. That slide is on my community tab. You can download it. The image is on my community tab. So just go and grab it off the community tab with a browser. So 93% of all wars are government secular. Now, of course, one atheist came up and said, it's not possible to tell the difference between government and secular activities. It's just not possible. It just can't be done. So, Thaddeus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we get this charge constantly. I mean, you hear lots of atheists. I'm not going to say every single atheist, but a lot of atheists firmly believe that religion is the main cause of war in the world, which just on the surface seems ridiculous, because war is usually about territory. It's usually about who gets to be the leader of the country, one of those two things. And neither of those things have anything to do with religion. So it should just be common sense that religion is rarely the cause of war. But that's not what the atheists tell us. They tell us that if there was no religion in the world, there wouldn't be no wars.
Well, yeah, we need to look into that. But the evidence is in, guys. I mean, quite bluntly, the evidence is there, and the evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of religion preventing war. For the most part, religion actually inhibits man's worst desires, with the exception of Islam. I must say that. With the exception, now, notice Nazism, Marxism, fascism are all secular ideologies, and all are versions of socialism. I know they're going to try and tell you fascism is on the right, Nazism, crap. Okay? Nonsense. Okay? These are all variations of socialism. The name is National Socialism. Now remember, people use Marxism, communism, socialism interchangeably. In fact, they use socialism and communism interchangeably. Communism is the end state of socialism. Socialism is the method to get to the Garden of Eden of communism. Right? National Socialism is simply a variation of socialism. Right? Fascism is another variation of socialism. Why don't we just instead of calling it National Socialism, let's just call it National Communism? Because people use the word communism for socialism all the time. Hitler was a national communist. Problem solved. Any comment, Thaddeus? You would have a big smile on your face?
No, I just you're a national communist. And I mean, of course people say that because the Nazis were the arch enemies of the communists.
There were two socialist there were two socialist countries fighting each other, two socialist governments vying for power.
Right. Well, I was just going to say that, but oftentimes people who are the most bitter enemies are on the same basic side, and they're competing for the same resources, and that's why they're bitter enemies. So just because they're enemies of each other doesn't mean they're opposite.
Yeah. Now, do understand, and there's a comment here, but atheists are communism's useful idiots. Whether or not you're a communist, you are still furthering and abetting the aims of communism. You're going to find that your aims as a socialist, your aims as an atheist, aid and abet what the socialists are attempting to do anyway. And also, atheism is incoherent Gnostic cultism. It's babble. Okay. Now, science and claims to reason do not automatically result in an atheist utopia free of violence and bigotry, or lead man to reason. If you look at our good old socialist Voltaire, he didn't like him many Jews. I can tell you that. Okay. And we can go through a whole bunch of them. Okay. Hitler, yeah, well, okay, he wasn't an atheist, so that's fine. Now, let's have a look at this quote here. Religion. The Latin meaning of religare, which is the root word of religion, means to bind, to hold back by tying, to thwart from forward progress, to sabotage, in other words. This definition is, let's just say it's a little inaccurate. Okay, let's just say it's slightly different from what you'll find if you go and actually, it's edited. Let's put it that way. Religion is the main reason for all of the harm and negativity in the world. Oh my golly. I'm talking about the top religions in the world, Judeo-Christian and even Islamic religions, government, the monetary system, science, and even the New Age religion. They are all meant to manipulate and control people and society. So, progress. Okay, so now we know progress. Their version of progress, right? Christianity is responsible for the scientific revolution. You need to understand that the scientific revolution is built on Christian beliefs, built on Christians, right? Reason is owned by Christianity because God is the Logos. Jesus is the Logos. Yes, it means the word, to say the word. However, it also is the principle of reason. The Logos is the principle of reason. We moved away from paganism. As we've seen briefly, this whole idea of socialism and atheism is taking us back to paganism, back to myth. Because when you remove the Logos, you don't get reason, you get myth-making. So control people, control society. We're going to be finding out that the socialists, as you know, had highly controlled societies. And so we're going to have a look into that insane atheist socialist social control for you as we go. Thaddeus, your turn.
Yeah, well, the author of this is clearly engaging in some propaganda. They've redefined the term. Well, first of all, even if the root word did mean that, which it doesn't. Well, I think we'll get into that here in a second. But even if it did, that doesn't mean that's what the term means now. This is a fallacy. And then he's just lumps everything together. Like I'm against everything. I'm against Jewish people and Christian people and Islamic people and the government and the monetary system and science and even New Age religion. So, he's going on a bit of a uncontrolled rant here. But I guess when you don't have any basis, there's nothing to control, nothing to check your thought. You can just blame everything for all your problems.
Yeah, we're going to have to look into all of these claims. We'll just see how many people have we got watching. Well, nice. Okay, let's continue. So now this is the 100 worst atrocities in history, the great big book of horrible things, the definitive chronicle of history's 100 worst atrocities by Matthew White. Let's have a look. Now, the clown of reason, Sam Harris. I meant to put a clown picture there. I don't know why I did that. I should have done that. So the clown of reason, Sam Harris, is a well-known critic of the historic impact of religion on ancient and modern societies. Also known for his love of totalitarianism and censorship. Remember, he did this fantastic interview most recently, where he stated that he didn't care if Hunter Biden had a cellar full of babies. That wouldn't matter to him, as long as blah, blah, blah. And also he described his love of censorship and totalitarianism. He was all for that because it's scientific censorship and scientific totalitarianism, so I guess it's okay. And in his book, The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason, Harris referred to religious faith as the most prolific source of violence in our history. Now, we've just seen from the Encyclopedia of Wars that this is absolutely positively not the case. Let's have a look here. Now, the study of the 100 worst atrocities in history counters such claims by Harris and others. Of the 100 events in his detailed study, only 11% are in the category of religious conflict. Right? So 2 fall under the category of human sacrifice. Now, yeah, okay, fine, let's be generous, give them another 2. And that's 13 atrocities, which are 13% of the total. So let's have a look. Oh, look, here comes the far right. This is those Incas and their human sacrifice, because I believe that we're supposed to revere the whole Southern American tribes these days. One problem I do have is the Pope is starting to get a little pagan. That's a bit of a strange concern there, man. Like, what the... So here comes the far right. The far right, oh my, they're so bad. The far right stopped these human sacrifices. These guys sacrificed tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. God alone knows how many people they murdered by tearing their hearts out on altars. But those good pagans and these guys, these nasty people, stopped it. Okay, then of course... the Spanish are coming and they bring a new religion, and the leader asks, how bad is that religion? Well, it forbids sacrificing children and eating human flesh. Yeah. Yeah, so this is, apparently this is better than Christianity. And of course, this is the fault of Christianity too. So, now, these are the religious conflicts that he mentions. The Taiping Rebellion, apparently 20 million deaths. We've got to figure out how many years. I have not looked into these numbers. the 30 Years' War, man, I would look twice at this because I've seen numbers that are much less than this, that are half of this. Clay, the JW. Guys, yeah, share the link, hit the like, please, please, please. That would would grow the channel, spread the info. Would also get people to join the live. So if you can do that, please make jihad on the like button and Sharia the video, please. I would appreciate it. So jihad, the like button, and Sharia, and that would be great. So Crusades. Now the Crusades numbers, I've seen numbers as low as 1 million. And the French Wars of Religion, well, okay, there's a question there because I'll be looking into this in the future, but again, there are questions about this. The Albigensian Crusade, wow, those were socialists too. We need to look into those socialists. You know, there'll be something fascinating to discuss there. So yeah, these are the 13. So, okay, that's a very short list at the end of the day. Christianity features in, the human sacrifice, gladiatorial games. Now, the Romans did kill a lot of people, but were they religious? They killed a lot of Christians. This was before the Catholic Church had this huge political power and was ruining the world, right? But yeah, okay, fine. Looks like people have always been killing Christians, even before Christians had a big international organization called the Church, right? But the Church, yeah, the Christians were being murdered then already by pagans. And but yeah, any comments from you, Thaddeus?
Well, see, Lloyd, you don't understand. We have to remember that what the evidence tells you doesn't matter. You just have to go with what you believe the evidence should say. And then you just promote that no matter what, just like Sam Harris here, that says that religious faith is the most prolific source of violence in history. 13% of all violence is clearly the most prolific source. You don't need to look at what that our 87% is. We know that it must also somehow be related to religious, even if it wasn't.
That 87% was a guy that accidentally fell down an escalator and crushed an old grandmother as he fell on top of her. That was the other 87%. So the whole list now,
or you just redefine things. You know, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing World War II is number one on this list, and you just redefine that and say that was a religious conflict. You know, like,
I was watching this one show, and this guy was saying, no, Stalin was a Confucianist. He was not an atheist. Like, okay, buddy. So someone says the whole list is political. Yeah, because the Albigensians took land, for instance.
World War II did not start because Germany chose to invade Poland. It started because Christians wanted to get rid of the Jewish people.
Okay, yeah. Well, we spoke of Skinner earlier. He was talking about we need to change society because of course we're going to destroy the world with all of these overpopulation and all of the nuclear bombs. Now, as we know, the Catholic Church created the nuclear bomb in a lab under the Vatican. Then the Catholic Church invented the submarine, the nuclear submarine, where they put all of these ICBMs that they also built in the lab under the Vatican, and they put those in the ocean to go and shoot nuclear bombs. And then plastic pollution, that's killing all the birds. Oh, that was invented by the Catholic Church. They make it in a lab under the Vatican, and then just distribute it on yellow trucks all around the world. And let's see, smoke that is killing people, and toxic medicines and toxic chemicals in the food, that's also made by the Catholic Church in a lab, right? No. That's all science. That's all science. So when are we going to ban science? Because science happens to be killing the world. Science made the nuclear bomb. Science made weapons of war. Science made dynamite. Science is choking the population with bad toxic chemicals. Science made this. Science made that. Science probably made the virus of unknown origin, right? Of unspecified, origin, and so on and so on and so on. So maybe we need to ban science, because science is killing the world with the automobile. Science is killing the world with... So yeah, guys, maybe we need to ban science, because science is very, very dangerous as far as I can tell.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're going to ban religion because it's responsible for 13% of violence, then I guess we need to ban whatever's responsible for the other 87% as well.
Yeah, I know. So understand, this is it's bogus. Now, secular World War One. So what's 35 million divided by 4? Okay, you're going to get to roughly 9 million. It's going to be 8 million plus, right? It is estimated that now this is just a round number, okay? You can change those numbers. It is estimated that 1 to 3 million people were tragically killed in the Crusades over about 200 years plus. This is just the main period, 1096 to 1300. Now, someone's going to go, no, it was 1294, 1296. Okay, whatever. Now, let's actually do some calculation. Let's actually do a little bit of sums here. Let me see. I'm going to try and do some sums. I'm from Africa, guys. This is going to be hard. If we had 1 million people, that's 6 zeros. and you divide that by 204 years, that's 4,900 people killed per year. Okay? Let's look at the Spanish Inquisition. Now, people say the Spanish Inquisition killed up to 50 million people. Crazy, but true. People say the Spanish Inquisition killed 1 billion people. Okay? So, now, perhaps as many as 3,000. Now, the low number on the Spanish Inquisition is 800 people. Quite literally, 800. Okay? And let's be generous and call it 5,000. Oh, what the hell. 5,000 people died over a period of 350. You could make that 400 years, but let's make it 350. That's 14.28 people per year were killed during the period of the Spanish Inquisition. 14 people per year is not exactly a genocide. And those were not killings by the church. Those were killings by the government. Okay? They had political reasons for those. But that's a story for another day. Now, let's look at World War I alone. 35 million people. Divided by 4 years. 8.75 million people killed per year. Let's divide that by 365. 24,000 people per day killed during World War I. Because now we have secular humanism to fix the problems, and this is an improvement. See, the number is bigger, the number is better. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, again, it doesn't matter what the numbers tell you. You just got to remember, atheism is not responsible for anything that a secular government does, and Christians are responsible for everything that anyone has ever done in the name of Christianity. So, yeah. Someone who calls themselves is a Christian and they go and murder 20 people, that is a Christian killing 20 people. Someone who calls themselves an atheist goes and kills 20 people, that's a psychopath. Killing people has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Now, understand also the Crusades, the numbers are all over the place, right? The low numbers, 1 million people over 200 plus years, right? Now, don't forget that 75% of Christian lands were invaded and conquered. There were rapes, there were tortures, there were slaughters, it was a very bad time. 75% of Christian land was invaded by the Muslims and taken. 25% of that land is now all that is left, and you call that Europe. Europe was next on the list. These Muslims were going to take everything. And they managed to keep those Muslim invaders out. Remember, the Muslims were in France in the 600s already. In the late 600s, the Muslims were already in France. They'd invaded Spain. They'd gone through Spain. They were in France in the 690s. Now, are you going to tell me the French had invaded the Middle East in the 600s? And this was revenge? No. They were only kicked out in 732, 20 kilometers from Paris. Okay, they got to within 20 clicks of Paris in 732. This is long before the colonizing went on. Okay, Islam is a conquering religion. It's a conquest. It's a revolutionary religion. Hey, Nicholas, welcome. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Okay, now this is World War II casualties. Poland, just during the war itself, lost 17.2% of its population. Okay, to the Russians and the Germans, of course. And after the war, they lost even more. They lost about 20% of their population. I live in Poland, by the way. The Soviet Union lost 25 million people, 14.2%. Now, this was not caused by the Catholic Church. I know someone's going to come and try and tell me it was, but anyway, this was a secular war. This is World War II. This is a lot of deaths, and this had nothing to do with the church of the Lamb that's on the corner of your street. Okay, thoughts, Thaddeus, before I go on?
Well, you're forgetting, though, that Italy was involved in the war, which we all know is synonymous with the Catholic Church. So anything Italy's involved in, that's a religious war.
I guess so. Yeah, Putin the Christian attacked Ukraine. Well, yeah, all those Muslims, never anything. Now, 20th century dictators. Now, notice how these lists differ here. The numbers differ, okay? Because someone's always trying to whitewash and downplay the numbers, okay? 20 million in the Soviet Union. Look at this list, 43 million. 65 million in China, okay, 37 million. Do you notice these numbers are all over the place because no one really knows, because these governments didn't keep. Now, notice the vast majority of these are atheist governments. Atheism in government kills. When atheists get government, they slaughter people, okay? Now, Joseph Stalin, okay, these numbers could be much, much higher. Mao Zedong, okay, the worst governments that have caused the worst atrocities and killed the most people are all socialist atheist governments. Understand, the worst atrocities in history by governments are by socialist atheist governments. Okay, we can argue. Obviously, Adolf Hitler was not an atheist, and Hideki Tojo, we could maybe say, was a Shintoist. He might have been an atheist. Hell, I don't know. But the rest, as you can see, it's overwhelmingly atheist. Comments, Thaddeus?
Yeah, and whenever this is raised against atheism, or not really even against atheism, but just in response to the atheists saying that religion is responsible for violence, they say those were governments, not atheists. That wasn't done in the name of atheism, or something along those lines. Which, of course, the so-called religious wars were done by governments too. So I don't know why it counts when it's against when it's a quote unquote Christian government doing it, and it doesn't count when it's an atheist government doing it.
Actually, no, so the dude asks, actually, Villainous asks, no, thank you, Thaddeus. No, well, socialist, 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 socialist. I have no idea if this guy was a socialist or not. I have no idea. But, I mean, he was certainly their buddy. He was their ally. But socialist, 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 they were all socialists except maybe this guy, Hideki Tojo. So they're all socialists. Let's continue. Okay, 170 million murdered. This is death by government. I just managed to get a copy of this book today, a couple of hours ago, in fact, so I haven't had time to go through it. But let's have a look. Okay, so he speaks here of the Soviet slave labor system created by Lenin and built up under Stalin in 70 years. Likely chewed up almost 40 million lives. Now that's a lowball number. Well over twice as many has probably died in some 400 years of the African slave trade, from capture to sale in an Arab, Oriental, or New World market. In total, during the first 88 years of the 20th century, almost 170 million men, women, and children have been shot, beaten, tortured, knifed, burned, starved, frozen, crushed, or worked to death, buried alive, drowned, hanged, bombed, or killed in any of the myriad ways governments have inflicted death on unarmed, helpless civilians and foreigners. The dead could conceivably be nearly 360 million people in the 20th century during the socialist atheist experiment. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, and they can say that this is by governments all they want. That'll be the typical atheist response, is that this was done by a government or done by a dictator or whatever. But it seems to be almost 100% of communist, socialist governments have done this, and only 1% of non-communist governments. There seems to be a correlation. That's
now, here's a question. Is it compulsory to be an atheist if you join the Communist Party? Yes, no. And the answer is, spoiler alert, yes. Atheism is compulsory if you're a communist. If you join the Communist Party, you want to be part of that, you must be an atheist. I thought atheism leads to reason, but apparently it leads to genocide. So, beware atheist governments. Individual atheists like Christians and other people often do good, but atheist rulers such as Lenin, Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, not an atheist, very likely not an atheist, and Pol Pot, they tortured, starved, and murdered more people in the 20th century than all the combined religious regimes of the entire world during the previous 19 centuries. This is not an exaggeration. By the modest estimates of a BBC war audit, I've shown the document on my channel, in 2004, atheist rulers killed as many as 110 million people. Now notice again, lowballing the number. At least 60 million in the Soviet Union and its satellites, 40 million in China, 15 million in Nazi Germany, 2 million in Cambodia, socialists at least, right? And 5 million elsewhere. This is Jeffrey Burton Russell. I have his book. I just got his book a couple of days ago. So, So this is all historically verifiable. Everyone just knows that religion is the cause of all wars according to the general narrative. Yes. Now notice also, everyone, I love these stories, Stalin was a Christian, okay? Stalin was expelled from a Georgian Orthodox seminary at the age of 19 or 20. He was never a Catholic or even Russian Orthodox. Georgia had its own church, of which he was a member by baptism. So in fact, he was kicked out because he was a socialist. He actually rejected, because he was rejecting the Christian training he was getting, at least the religious training he was getting, because he was far more interested in the ideas of Lenin and the ideas of Engels and the ideas of Marx. So he rejected that as a joke and he decided to leave. He got kicked out. Okay. In fact, he claims he left. So atheism is a fundamental rule of the Communist Party. Your comments, Thaddeus?
Well, if anyone wants to say that Stalin was a Christian because he was born into a Christian family, or, at least nominally Christian family, then I would just say, well, by your definition, to the atheist making this claim, I bet you that you're a Christian too, because the vast majority of atheists were not born into atheist families. They were born into Christian families. So by their own definition, since whatever you're born as counts forever, then I guess they are still a Christian.
Fair enough. I mean, look, they're going to have to go to any length they can to claim, obviously, that they lack responsibility. Now, of course, Richard Dawkins Foundation, the Atheist Atrocities Fallacy, Hitler, Stalin, and Pol Pot. Now, watch the little clever word game this guy plays. Okay, so he's going to talk about Hitler, Stalin, and Pol Pot. And he says here, Hitler was a Christian. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, fine. I will do a separate show on that entire story. But notice, okay, I would like to attend to each of these three homicidal stooges, not atheists, not socialists, Stalin, Pol Pot, and Hitler. Now, again, I don't think Hitler was an atheist. Hitler was a socialist for sure, who are constantly trotted out to defend a religious worldview. I will lend Hitler the most time. Now, why doesn't he want to spend time on the two atheists? You know, and why doesn't he have Mao? Mao killed a lot more people than Pol Pot. As the claim he was an atheist represents the most egregious violation of the truth, because this is the only drum he can bang to try to say you're wrong. Hitler wasn't an atheist. And of course he goes, Hitler was a Christian. We will discuss that another day. But we can believe anything Hitler says, of course. Thaddeus, before we go on, so now I'm going to get to the part where atheists were slaughtering Christians in the name of atheism.
So before we get on, he calls this a fallacy, that Christians say that atheism is bad because of atheist dictators. Well, actually, generally, Christians only bring this up when the atheist is like, Christianity is bad because of the Crusades, or religion is bad because it leads to all violence. Almost all violence in the entire history of the world is caused by religions of one form or another. And then you say, well, let's look at history and see what it actually says, and then point out all these horrible atheist regimes that did horrible things, and then they're like, well, those don't count, and I'm still right. So it's only a fallacy, and he's right, it is a fallacy. If someone says that atheism is false because Stalin was a nasty person, well, that's a fallacy, but that's not usually why it's brought up. And Dawkins himself likes to push this narrative that religion's bad because it leads to violence. Yeah. But violence done by atheists in the name of atheism, often in many cases, as we'll see, that doesn't count. That doesn't prove that atheism is bad. It only works if it's Christianity, and generally it's always. There's only three things they ever can point to anyway. It's the Crusades, or the Inquisition, or witch trials.
Yeah, well, let's have a look here. You see, notice he says here, shouldn't atheists present a believer with the crimes committed by the Holy See of the Inquisitions, the Crusades, and other faith-wielding misanthropes? They will often hear the reply, well, what about Stalin, Pol Pot, and Hitler? They were atheists and they killed millions. Oh boy, it looks like we just have this little story going. So guys, we're going to see these regimes, by definition, were atheist. Right? Socialism is by definition atheist. And we're going to be having a lot of fun with this. So, yeah.
And he's right that's not a valid reply if you're saying that we're not responsible for our atrocities because you have atrocities. But he needs to take responsibility for his own atrocities if he's going to advance this argument that something is false because of things done in its name.
Also, if we've got the dictum, if you've got the Ten Commandments, and you've got the commandment that says, thou shalt not murder, then we have a standard that we can hold that states that you have violated the standard, you have violated the rule. Where in atheism is the authority? Who holds the authority? That states, thou shalt not murder. Where is this absolute rule? Where's this authority? Where's this sublime eternal authority? They do not believe in any such thing. So where does atheism forbid murder?
And maybe that's the real reason why violence done by Christians counts, is because Christianity is against violence. Violence done by atheists doesn't count because there's nothing in atheism to say that's wrong. So those people aren't being hypocritical. Yeah. So therefore, it's all fine.
Yeah, no, agreed. So let's look at the atheist de-Christianization of France, known popularly as the French Revolution. On September 2, 1792, at Carme prison in Paris, over 100 Catholic priests were jailed within an old monastery. Their crime? Refusing to forsake their church for the new secular republic. A vicious mob stormed the prison and slaughtered 115 priests. That bloodbath was just one of several, remembered today as the September massacres, when over 1,000 victims perished. Now, these people were killed because they refused to become secular. In other words, they were killed by atheists, because atheism was a requirement under this new government. France had to be de-Christianized, and those who refused to renounce their Christianity were ordered to be killed on sight. They killed thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the name of reason and in the name of atheism. So the atheist purge. These atrocities were part of an escalating campaign of violence known as de-Christianization, by which atheists sought to purge religion, meaning the Catholic Church and Christian religion, from France. Now, atheists like Pierre Chaumet and Jacques Hébert argued that these atrocities, this murder, this killing, was necessary so that reason would triumph over superstition and fanaticism. Right? So atheists, like these atheists, said that they had to murder. I think the total count is, actually I've discovered within, I have the resource, I didn't put it in yet because I just got the book, but they killed over 250,000 people in the name of reason. Atheists killed over 250,000 people, in the name of atheism, to advance the atheist cause, in the name of reason. To wipe out superstition and fanaticism, they had to kill hundreds of thousands of people. So yeah, Thaddeus, your thoughts before I go on.
Yeah, Anna said this is what should be taught in schools, and I actually went to Christian schools as a child, and we learned about the French Revolution, but there was never any hint that it was motivated, that the violence was motivated by, reason, that it was motivated by getting rid of Christianity. There was no teaching about there being a religious aspect to this, and that's in a Christian school, not even in a secular school.
Yeah.
So this is this information is just not well known at all.
Yeah. Now, in their eyes, churches were weeds in need of plowing so that more enlightened ideas could grow. Crosses were seized from altars. Bells were plundered and melted down for the war effort. Even the calendar was changed. I believe the Muslims did that too, and so did the Soviets in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Even the calendar was changed from a 7-day week to a 10-day week, removing Sundays so that there would not be a time to worship or any association of the day with Sunday. And since secularists no longer wanted to base their dating system around the birth of Jesus, they reset the count and based it upon the birth of their revolution. Islam did that too, but just so by the way. And of course, the Soviets also removed Sunday. Right, so let's have a look here. Now, Robespierre, Now, what's happened within socialist governments when they force atheism upon the population? AFI, and these numbers obviously come directly from, I just made them up. Or maybe I got them from very, very, very long hours of research from numerous books. But, so, now the worship of reason. So what happens is, in many, many cases, the atheists have discovered, these atheist socialists have discovered that they need to give people something to believe in, because people constantly seem to want to believe some kind of faith. They want to have some kind of faith. So what they do is they go like, oh, we've just removed their faith, and then we need to give them something back. And of course, the very next thing is they then make up a religion that serves as a substitute. Okay? Wesley Curry, you're off topic. Stop talking nonsense. I don't have time to listen to nonsense. Okay? So I'll put you in timeout if you make another off-topic dumb statement, and then I'll ban you. Okay? Now, the worship of reason, the atheist religion. So, some atheists now sought to replace Christianity with their own belief system. They called it the cult of reason. And this was the very first state-sponsored atheistic religion. So the French atheists, after killing all the Christians and destroying hundreds of churches, they decided, okay, well, we're going to start a religion. It's going to be an atheistic religion. It's going to worship reason. And notice the theme here, it is based entirely upon the Greek and Roman style, which was entirely pagan. Just like that story I told you in the beginning, they went back to the model, the Greek and Roman pagans, and they had a woman dressed as a pagan goddess. Okay, so it was a godless alternative to churches where citizens could hear sermons that instilled virtue with no biblical language. They were supposed to speak of the virtues of science. Isn't that something atheists do today? They speak of the virtues of science and rational thinking. Okay? And then, so churches were then converted into temples of reason, devoted to worship of reason, personified as a woman bearing a torch to symbolize enlightened thinking. Now, in many of the stories, the early stories, it seems that they took a prostitute or they took a dancer and they laid her naked across the altar at the Notre Dame Cathedral and others. But this is what they did, and they had a whole festival. They had services. The atheists made up their own holiday for it, the Festival of Reason, held on November 10th, 1793 at Notre Dame. The altars were rededicated to truth and liberty. Now, when they say liberty, again, this is like equality. It's not equality, it's the elimination of hierarchy, right? And making everyone the same. It's sameness. It's shapeless, formless. And when they say liberty, they don't mean freedom. They mean the removal of moral constraints so that you have no constraints upon your immoral behavior. Now, understand these things became basically pride parades, orgies, drunkenness. So despite these lofty themes, the festival was not so much a dignified ceremony, but rather a sensual spectacle, akin to the Mardi Gras. Let's just say these things got sexually out of hand. So reason based on the Enlightenment. Now the cult of reason was based on the principles of enlightenment. And anti-clericalism, in other words, we hate the priests. Its goal was the perfection of mankind through the attainment of truth and liberty by murdering all the priests. And its guiding principle was to exercise reason. It encouraged congregational worship and devotional displays based on reason. That sounds a little Christian, doesn't it, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, this is pure secular, right? Congregational worship.
Yeah. Clayt the JW. Yes, we'll have to be doing quite a bit on this. I've got over 100 pages of slides at the moment, and I've got more. So yeah, it's going to be, so this is the very first one, and it's the first time I'm running through this. So, okay, yeah. So the first festival, okay, was at the Cathedral in Notre Dame. That was the largest one. And the de-Christianization of the churches where these Festival of Reasons were held were very dramatic. Now, according to historian Simon Schama, the churches were stripped of all priestly objects. There were in any case urgent practical reasons for the despoliation. Church bells were needed for arms foundries to go make weapons, gold and silver for the Republic's treasury, or they needed a little bit of money. Though a great deal of the latter certainly found its way into the pockets of de-Christianizers. Oh boy, sounds familiar. But there was also pure vandalism on a massive scale. You have no idea. I've read through oh my God, the amount of destruction was enormous. The destruction of historical pieces, the destruction of historically valuable old ancient pieces was incredible. This is the guy, very, very well-known historian. So the Bishop of Paris and the clergy were to attend in order to publicly renounce their belief and functions as minister of the Catholic Church, declaring that they would recognize no public worship but that of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This is your family, so the family unit must be abolished. We are all the same, no one is wiser, no one is better, everyone's equal. And liberty, in other words, there are no moral constraints in your behavior. And these also would be the equivalent of communist struggle sessions. Thaddeus, it looks like you want to say something?
Well, I was just thinking of the slide a couple back when you reread Liberty here, and it said they, despite being devoted to this lofty goal of liberty, they became sexual debauchery.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
well, aren't those one and the same? Actually, if you're free from any kind of moral constraints, can't you just? Isn't that the natural thing that's going to happen? Is this kind of sexual debauchery?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And that is exactly what happened. So, the opening words were given by a Prussian nobleman. Now, the Prussians come from a pagan background. Okay, that's a long story. Who was instrumental in the French Revolution, named Anacharsis Clootz. And he declared that the Republic would contain but one God only, the people. Some people, so that's worship of man in the image of man. And some people describe the Festival of Reason as lurid, licentious, or scandalous, debauched. Debauched a good word. Now think modern pride parades. Let's have a look at the word lurid. The definition of lurid, causing horror or revulsion, something gruesome. In other words, people were disgusted by this. Okay? It's shocking, right? Now, lurid, for the example, the tabloids gave the lurid details of the floating wreckage and dismembered bodies. Notice this doesn't come across as reasoned and awesome. This comes across as sick and disgusting. Then licentious, okay? Disapproving, especially of a person or their behavior, sexual in an uncontrolled and socially unacceptable way. This was what reason led them to.
Well, yeah, this is where the liberty's leading, right? Because it's socially unacceptable. They're changing what's socially, or at least trying to change what's socially acceptable. Take behavior that's always been seen as wrong and inappropriate, and change it. And that's the great revolution. It has nothing to do with reason.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. It's really about sexuality.
Yeah, lust. Lust, quite bluntly. Understand? So remember, they do say we are not Christians. We do the opposite of what the Christians do. They actually, that exists as well. Then we come to Robespierre, man of terror's state cult. So then this was an embarrassment. This cult of reason, this worship of reason, these people were anything but reasonable. These atheists that claimed that they were following reason after they murdered something like 265,000 people. But after this embarrassment, Robespierre achieved dictatorial power and decided to establish his own state religion, called the cult of the supreme being. Right. So the new deistic religion was intended to curb the excesses, moral excesses, immoral, associated with the de-Christianization movement and the replacement of Catholicism with the new religion. It briefly lasted to the spring and summer. It lasted for a year. Okay? Now, the cult of the supreme being supported the idea of a supreme being and immortality of the soul. However, it was not consistent with Christian doctrine, as the only way virtue could be attained was through fidelity and devotion to liberty and democracy. Oh my gosh, democracy. Well, we have the North Korean Democratic Republic of North Korea. We have the German Democratic Republic. We've got the democratic... Democracy seems to be a very popular word amongst socialists and atheists. Maybe they don't use democracy in the way that... Well, it's a socialist term. Socialist. Now, I want to read something from my notes on this idea of Robespierre. Now, they created a new religion, right? So he now replaces one cult with another. The cult of reason he replaces, because, you see, the culture was really steeped in the idea of having religion, right? So he goes and he talks to people and he says, he basically says to them that, let me see what he says. I'm looking at this. Okay, so he says that men are attached to the ideas that they've grown up with, basically, okay? And can such a, says, at any rate, I cannot conceive how nature can have suggested to men fictions more beneficial than all realities, right? Actually, no, what did he say? Hold on, I've got to find the quote here that he says. He says that if the existence of God and the immortality of the soul were nothing but dreams, they would still be the most beautiful conceptions of the human spirit. And he says that, are you going to tear away people's faith in God in these beautiful churches? And you're going to tell the grieving person that, oh yeah, these guys just turned into worm food and their life was meaningless. He says, how does that give them solace? How does that give them comfort? We need to give them a religion that makes them feel good. It replaces what they've lost. So when they say he was a deist, was he really a deist? Did he really believe it? But many socialist groups have discovered that when you strip away the church, when you destroy Christianity, when you destroy the church, people still want to believe something, and they are agitated. It doesn't work. Eventually you have to give them something, and then they make up a fake religion to give them. And that is exactly what he did. Now, Thaddeus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we can see this today as well. In various ways. You can see it in the rise of so-called New Age religions, where people are just making stuff up, basically wholesale, and saying that it's true. You can see it in people's fanatical devotion to a political party, to a set of virtues that they don't have any basis to them, but they have a fanatical devotion to them. So it does seem to be very consistent with human nature that we need to have, some sort of spiritual religious connection. I would argue that is an indication that there is a God, because it doesn't make any sense apart from it. But the atheist typically, there are rare exceptions, but the atheist typically will live their life in such a way as if they believe in some sort of spiritual higher authority. They'll live with moral principles. They'll feel like there's a difference between what's right and wrong, while denying it with their lips.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting thing. And Robespierre, he nailed it here. He said, you can't replace religion with nothing. You have to replace it with something else. He had his own cult of supreme being, but
Yeah.
we're going to see over and over again. That's what all of these early socialist communists were trying to do. They weren't trying to, replace religion with nothing. They did want to get rid of religion, but they didn't want to replace it with nothing. They wanted to replace it with something else.
Yeah. He says here, I found the quote. So, how does it help a man if you persuade him that blind force presides over his destiny and strikes at random, now at the virtuous, now at the criminal? Does it help him to believe that his soul is nothing but a thin vapor that is dissipated at the mouth of the tomb? Will the idea of annihilation inspire him with purer and higher sentiments than that of immortality? Will it give him more respect for himself and his fellow men, more devotion to his country, a braver face against tyranny, or deeper disdain for pleasure or for death? In other words, we got to inspire our people, and you've got to give them something to be inspired by. And he says, you have this vapid, empty, arid ideology that offers men nothing, gives them nothing to aspire to believe in, and we need these people to be on our side because they need to follow our ideals. We need to give them ideals to aspire to. So yeah, it's odd if they don't believe in Okay, yeah. So basically, follow the Sharia and we'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Just real quickly, I've seen more modern atheist philosophers say something similar, like, we need a controlling lie to be a functional society. We can't replace Christianity with nothing. We have to replace it with a different lie. And they'll use that term because, with their lips, they believe that there is no God and it is all meaningless. But like, we need meaning, so let's lie to ourselves and pretend there is meaning. And we can replace it with whatever meaning we want because it's just a lie anyway.
Agreed. Fantastic. Yeah. So now, atheists and the drowning at Nantes. I'll just call it Nantes or whatever because, man, I'm not French. So the atheist revolutionaries passed a law that all non-conforming clergy, in other words, clergy that wouldn't renounce Christianity, be killed on sight, because that's reasonable. That's what atheists do, because atheism leads to reason, guys. You need to get this. And anyone who harbored such enemies was subject to the death penalty. So Jean-Baptiste Carrière enforced the law by loading priests and nuns like cattle onto boats, ferrying them down the Loire River. They were stripped naked, and they were tied together in pairs, one priest per nun, in republican marriages designed to mock their vows of celibacy. They were then thrown overboard. Okay, Wesley Curry, I have no idea what your contribution is here, but you are starting to get seriously annoying. Right, so I think we've had this little discussion with you. And, yeah, so have a nice day. Cheers, buddy. So, they were stripped naked and tied together in pairs, one priest per nun, in republican marriages, designed to mock their vows of celibacy. They were then thrown overboard and killed. When this method proved far too inefficient for mass executions, Carrier sank the vessels with all the captives trapped on board, drowning them in what was dubbed the national bathtub. Now, these weren't the only killings, understand. They would often dig long ditches, line people up, and then shoot them, and they would fall into the ditches. I think that might sound familiar from actions carried out in the 20th century by well-known socialist atheist governments. But this got a start there. Certainly they got a head start. The French got a head start in them. Yeah. So between 5,000, now the numbers vary, but up to 9,000 people were murdered in the drownings at Nantes, including innocent families with women and children. This happened in the name of atheism, in the name of reason, to stamp out fanaticism. So, yeah.
Yeah, and 5,000 people is a lot. And this is one event. And I've never heard of this, and I know, I mean, I'm not bragging, I'm just stating a fact that I know a lot more about religious history than most people do. Yet we hear constantly about the Spanish Inquisition, which I think you said was a similar number of people killed over a period of 300 years. It's very interesting that our atheist friends are so quick to point out
the Inquisition, for instance, which is a third of these numbers, or less.
Right. They're very quick to point out any failing they can find in Christian history. And we acknowledge those are failings. We're not saying that the witch trials were great or something. But we're also talking about typically no one was killed at all in a witch trial. And when in the rare cases where people were put to death, it'd be, a dozen people or something. And we hear about these things constantly from atheists. Meanwhile, I've never heard once in my life about this one specific incident where at least 5,000 people were killed specifically for being religious.
Mm-hmm. And if you protected them, if you hid one in your house or your barn, your family died as well. So if you protected a nun or a Christian or a priest, you would die too. That's crazy. Yeah, and then this is less people than were killed in the Inquisition. And this happened in what, 1 year, 2 years? Inquisition was 350 years. So look at the numbers. I mean, if we divide 9,000 by 2, it's 4,500 people a year. The Inquisition was what? If the Inquisition was 800 people, let me go back to my calculator. If the Inquisition was as low as 800 people and you divide that by 350 years instead of 400, that's 2.28 people per year. If we go to the high number, let's go 3,000, divide that by 350 years, okay, that's 8.5 people a year. And as we did earlier, we did 5,000 people. If we could be generous here, we would divide that by 350 years, that's 14 people a year. Here they're killed a whole bunch more, but it's okay. Yeah, that's atheist hypocrisy for you. Let's move on. And this guy says, never have I had so much amusement as in seeing the last grimaces of priests as they die, or some variation thereof, is what he is known to have said. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah. Now, Atheists and the Martyrs of Compiègne. Now, this is, they went to a cloister of nuns who refused to renounce Christianity. They refused to renounce Christianity and embrace science. So hold on. These nuns had to embrace science. Understand. Okay? They had to embrace science. And if they refused to embrace reason and science, they were murdered by atheists. The reign of terror raged on for months and flooded the streets with innocent blood, claiming over 40,000 victims. The victim numbers, I mean, look, they imprisoned at least 300,000 people. Okay? So imprisoned, and then of course they murdered. The best numbers we have is about 263,000, give or take. So you're looking at well over 260k people murdered. All right, and then in 1794, the Martyrs of Compiègne were led to the guillotine in Paris. The government had ordered all converts to disband convents, yet these nuns refused and kept their community together. The revolutionaries judged the nuns as traitors for their defiance and condemned them to beheading. Each woman, they started singing a song. They started singing a hymn. Each one went without complaint to the blade, while the other nuns kept singing the hymn, which grew softer as their numbers dwindled, until at last they killed the final one. Now, if we look at the Salem witch trials, 19 witches died. That's the official number. Okay, these are 16 nuns. So numbers are close. Now, I hope that we can now liberally, continuously, voluminously, endlessly tell these atheists about, well, what about those 9,000 people you drowned? What about these 16 nuns? We can go on and on about that because, forever until the end of time, atheists are guilty for every single crime committed by every atheist. I think it's only fair. What do you say, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I think it's completely fair. And just to be crystal clear, I don't think that it's a valid argument against atheism, but it's certainly a valid reply against atheists who believe that bringing up the Salem witch trials or any other incident in Christian history is a valid argument against Christianity.
Yeah. So then Edmund Burke on atheistical fanaticism. So this is a contemporary. This is the man who founded classical liberalism, or conservatism, sorry. So we cannot be ignorant of the spirit of atheistical fanaticism that is inspired by a multitude of writings dispersed with incredible, he means here, personal attention, assiduity, personal attention, and expense. So the atheists went out of their way to get their hate preaching out into the world, and by sermons delivered in all the streets and places of public resort in Paris. These atheistical fathers have a bigotry of their own. The resources of intrigue are called in to supply the defects of argument. So in other words, these guys couldn't back up their arguments, so they had to use resources of intrigue. And to this system of literary monopoly was joined an unremitting industry to blacken and discredit in every way and by every means all those who did not hold to their faction. Nothing was wanted but the power of carrying the intolerance of the tongue and the pen into a persecution which would strike at property, liberty, and life, because they were socialists and they want to take your property, they want to take your money, they want to control you, and they murdered a lot of people. So yeah, this is Edmund Burke from 1790. So yeah.
Yeah, I just want to quickly point out that this is contemporary. That
Yeah.
So the point of showing a contemporary view here is that this isn't Lloyd and I projecting something on the past, which we've invented through our own mind. This is how people of the day saw the behavior.
Yeah, no, agreed. And so the Jacobins Jacobins, a society without God. Notice their aims here are liberty and equality. They were the most murderous of the lot. The first attempt to create a society consciously without God, was by the French Jacobins in the 1790s with their atheist cult of reasons. The Jacobins were members of a democratic, club founded in France, first known as the Society of the Friends of the Constitution. Oh, that's so sweet. They wanted to purify society and to implement their moral vision on earth, and thus they wanted to destroy Christianity. The Jacobin moral position left them in no doubt as to what to do with their ideological enemies. In Western France alone, they killed 250,000 people who had attempted to adhere to the old religion. So the number that I have from the sources that I've got is 263,000. Actually, let me have a look here. So one of the places you can look is this one, Death by Government by R.J. Rummel, and there's another one. Let me see if I can find it. There's another one I have to look at. I don't have that one. But anyway, this is one of the sources, Death by Government, R.J. Rummel. There's another source that I have as well for this. So the Jacobins weren't having this. They slaughtered people. And notice they were also in favor of centralized power of the state because they were socialists. Socialists love centralized state power. And they were hostile to any idea of its weakening or dismemberment. So, yeah. Liberty and equality, they're fantastic people. Now, understand Christians have been persecuted from the first century. The Romans, the Greeks, everybody was killing Christians. Stuff was fed to the lions. Yeah. Okay. And understand that these socialists are doing nothing different than what the Romans did. This is for the very same reasons. They're acting just like the pagans did. There's nothing different. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, maybe we just figured out how all violence is caused by religion. You see, if an atheist kills a Christian, it's because of their religion. Therefore, it's religious violence. If the Roman government kills a Christian because they're a Christian, that is religious violence. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My brain, good grief. Now, the Jacobin effort to do away with Christianity and build a society based on rational thought ended in extreme violence. The Jacobins were not unique. Now, this is from Dr. Michael Burleigh, historian at the Hoover Institution, Stanford. And Burleigh points out that societies which have rejected God have not escaped mankind's violent nature, because these people do not understand human nature. If you subtract God and the notion of an afterlife, then there's a real risk in the political utopianism so deadly in the 20th century that you will attempt to create heaven on earth, go for a quick fix in the here and now, to have the arrogant illusion that you can remake man and woman into some sort of new being, and that invariably results in hell for ordinary people. Oh, and while we're here, I need to have a look at this guy. You may have heard of this guy called Dawkins. Okay, The Case for Militant Atheism. And this is a talk given by a guy called Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins went on TED and he had a screed about we need militant atheism. There's no room for a God in the world as he sees it. He believes atheists should be forceful in opposing religion. Doesn't it say in the Quran that the believers should be forceful against the unbelievers? I believe the Quran says that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, yeah, he believes that atheists should be forceful. Now I believe Robespierre, him too, but Voltaire had a lot to say like this. If you love the poetry of Percy Bysshe Shelley, go look at his... Oh man, the guy was an atheist extraordinaire. The man was virulently atheist. Okay, Percy Bysshe Shelley was incredibly atheist. Thank you very much for the donations. I really appreciate it. There was one earlier, and I didn't say thank you for that, and I do appreciate it. Yeah, guys, I've been away from because I've been researching. I have a lot of research. I have a lot of stuff to get through. There's a huge. I've already done over 100 slides. I've got two presentations finished. I've got one that's almost finished. I've got a couple that are starting and ready. There's a lot to unpack here, but you'd be shocked to see. I mean, we're gonna. I mean, seriously, the case here is so strong. So that's good old Dawkins for you. Remember, this is Dawkins and militant atheism. Atheists must aggressively fight. Okay? And then others have wondered whether his strident approach could do more harm. Well, we've seen the harm that it does. So thanks, Richard. So, and this invariably, this effort to remake man results in hell for ordinary people. Yeah, Thaddeus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny hearing Dawkins say, we gotta use violence if necessary to instill atheism. That'll solve all the problems of violence in the world.
Yeah, you got to wonder about that. So let me see how far we're going to go down this road because, yeah, I got to see now. Okay, yeah, we have that. Yeah, we're going to see, guys. Audience, should I continue or should I call it at 2 hours? The question's up to you because we actually the numbers watching have actually increased, so that's great. Guys, okay, Marxist utopia based on reason. So Marx is a well-known secular humanist as well as atheist, of course. Now, notice everyone says it's the opium of the people, but you've got to look deeper into what was said. Now, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature. It is the heart of a heartless world and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. But notice Robespierre tells us that, look, you can't give man nothing. You got to give them something. So they made up a religion to give people. Mm-hmm. Because they actually want the religion. Their souls need to be fed by something. Right, so now, and he says, in communist society, it is possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. We'd get to explore all the different parts of ourselves, our creativity, our intellect, our gentleness, and our ferocity, and everyone would have a bit of time to do philosophy. Remember when I opened with the Congresswoman? That's exactly the same sentiment expressed by the pagans 2,400 years ago. Marx is returning us to paganism. Thank you, Nicholas. I so appreciate it. Yeah, I saw the Aquinas Just War theory. Actually, that's outside the scope of this and the upcoming talks that I have in mind. But yeah, the Aquinas Just War theory, yeah, that's... Obviously, the thing is, look, Jesus was not a warrior. Jesus did not preach any kind of violence. But do understand that government is something that is required even by the New Testament, right? We have to have courts, we have to have justice, and also for you to stand aside when people are being killed, that is sinful. You are not doing anything to head off evil, right? You're not taking responsibility for dealing with that, and therefore if you have a government, and we're supposed to have government, supposed to have nations, borders, right? You therefore have a right, a natural law right. And remember, it doesn't say thou shalt not kill, it says thou shalt not murder. You do have a right to protect others. You do have the right to protect your country, your civilization. So that is outside of the scope of Christianity, but government should be shaped by Christian morality. Am I making sense, Thaddeus? And the Christians struggled with we need to go to war to defend our brothers and sisters and our lands, but we're Christians, we don't want to. But they realize, look, it's one of as a moral duty, we need to, because if we don't stop these people, they will kill us all. They will wipe us out and they will take everything. And this is not moral either. You have a right to exist. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the questions that there has been some struggle throughout the Christian history of, kind of finding the right balance. So, if you look at either extreme, then you're going to have, it's going to clearly create some huge problems. Like, you look at the atheist interpretation that the Christians always are just waging war and blah, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't match with reality. It doesn't match with scripture. But, you look at the other extreme and say that Christians should be completely pacifist all the time. And you find very few people throughout history who have supported that. And, it's an obvious problem, because if you're pacifist and someone else isn't, well, congratulations. You're now their servants or slaves, depending on how they view you. Before you go on, I did want to comment on the last line from this Marx quote here, that we get to explore all the different parts of ourselves, our creativity, our intellect, our gentleness, and our ferocity. Doesn't this sound just like the modern ideal that explore who you are, find out who you truly are. Uh, really sounds pretty similar to me.
Yeah, sounds really good. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
it definitely it sounds good on the surface. I mean, it's hard to object to someone saying that. Yeah, of course you should find out who you are. Of course you should explore yourself. Uh, the quiet part is where you get into trouble. Where what does that mean? Well, that means you get to define your own morals. That means you get to define what's right and wrong. You get to be freed from
Yeah.
all this horrible bounds that religion has put on you, and you get to decide for yourself what you get to
You
do.
know, he was very vague in some of his philosophy. So, for instance, people say, look, he spoke of communism, and communism is the end state, it's the end goal. Socialism is the vehicle to get you to this Garden of Eden of communism. And then he's very vague about, he and Engels are very vague about what exactly, at least originally, he's very vague about what is communism, what will it be? Because that is when the state withers away and you end up in this perfect government, right? The state just runs itself somehow. And people asked him, so what is the end state? How does it happen? How does it come about? He had no idea, had no clue. And he said, it's not for me to write recipes for people of the future. Like, okay, yeah. So, anywho, so in his doctoral thesis, Marx proclaims that in the country of reason, the existence of God cannot have any meaning. He says what? In the country of reason, it is an area in which God's existence ceases. Now, we saw in France, we've seen in the Soviet Union, we've seen in Pol Pot's country, we've seen in Mao's country, where when they removed God, they had slaughter. They quite bluntly had slaughter and chaos, right? And you may notice that secular humanist language very closely resembles Marxism because he was a secular humanist as well. Now, there are three postulates. So this is okay. So there's metaphysical or dialectical materialism, which considers matter as the supreme and unique cause of everything. And man is considered, though, the supreme being, although matter is matter, so but man's the supreme matter, I guess. And everything is deterministic, although, yeah, so in other words, just atoms banging together give you thoughts. There's no soul that animates you.
Mhm.
There's historical materialism, because in Marxism, history is the thing that drives progress, right? According to which the economic factor is the principal and decisive factor, and the economic structure is the carrying structure of all other structures that, wow, it just makes my head hurt. And then absolute humanism. Oh my gosh, hey, Marx was a humanist too, which sets man at the summit of the cosmos. Man is the supreme being. That's a little Gnostic. That's a little occultic. And that's what the Nazis believed. It's what the Marxists believe. It's what the fascists believe. It's what the Gnostics believed. So, yeah, anyway, yeah, your thoughts, that is?
Yeah, I mean, the number two there, this is what we associate with communism, with Marxism, is the end of private property and whatnot. We rarely realize that there are three aspects that go hand in hand. That we don't think that we think of it as just a purely economical uh, principle or proposal
Hmm.
or whatever you want to call it. Where in reality, it's a complete political system that seeks to control every aspect of your life. That sounds a little
Yeah,
familiar.
and in his judgment, religion was the thing that suppresses your greatness. Religion suppresses your talent. Religion suppresses your ability. You must remove religion. You must destroy religion. You must destroy the church so that man can become aware of his greatness, his dignity, his godhood. Religion is the thing that is removing it. But these guys, don't forget. Now, I mean, once you go into the stuff, they want you all to wear the same clothes, eat the same food. It's just nuts. The sheer amount of control. Now, Marx, I'm not going to go into depth on this because let's just say he didn't like him some Jews either. Okay, but religion does not constitute the foundation, but the phenomenon of worldly limitation. Okay, uh, we explain the religious subjection of free citizens with their earthly subjection. We affirm that they will suppress their religious limitation as soon as they're suppressed. In other words, once they find reason, religion will just vanish. Once they are socialist, religion will vanish and people will suddenly flourish. Everything will be awesome, right? And religion expresses man's failure to reach his own greatness. In other words, you are held back because of religion. When man achieves his greatness, the religious phenomenon will disappear. So there you go. So that's basically what he's talking about. So, you know, religion is the expression of real misery and a protest against it. Religion is the groan of the oppressed, the sentiment of a heartless world, blah, blah, blah. So understand, he's got a very negative view, and this is exactly, now notice these atheists say exactly the same things. Now what's interesting is, that means they're Marxists. And Marx, he was he was the progenitor of genocides, of the most totalitarian governments to ever exist. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, to borrow from earlier, the response here is that Marx is naïf, right?
Yeah.
That well, he may have said some things that were correct, but that doesn't mean that other things that he said are also correct, and which I mean is true, but we're actually quoting the exact things that you agree with, and those are his core tenets. So it does seem like you are pretty Marxist. Maybe you don't think that the government should eliminate private property or something. You throw out one principle, but
Yeah.
absolutely, that third principle there of man becoming his own God, we see that this is the dominant position in secular society today. This is the position that's being pushed by the media, the education system, whatnot. And they don't use those terms. They make it subtle,
But it's
but it
Marxist.
absolutely
I
is
said
what
they
they're
are
doing.
communism's useful idiots, and they are communism's useful idiots.
Exactly. Yeah,
Now,
exactly. That's a great way of putting it. They might not say they adhere to the doctrines, and they might not think they do, but they are serving the purpose nonetheless.
yeah. Now, this is from, okay, it's from the Roman Catholic Church, guys. So bring out your conspiracy theories and hatred. Knock yourselves out in the comments. But in Christianity, man raised to the dignity of God's Son becomes greater and not smaller, freer and not more enslaved, nobler and not more petty, more serene and not more tormented. The Christian, in fact, is a man who, knowing that he is infinitely loved by God, knows that he has become infinitely great. Right, so this is the newspaper of the Catholic Church. This is from 1978, when the Pope was actually... There was a time when the question, is the Pope Catholic, was just a joke. Now it's actually a very, very serious question. So, okay, we'll start winding down. It's 2 hours and I'm hungry and thirsty. This is the investigation of un-American propaganda activities in the United States. Hearings, okay, HRES 282. You may be interested in knowing that we have preachers active in churches who are members of the Communist Party. They are priests in the church who are members of the Communist Party. Religion is forbidden if you're a member of the Communist Party. So in other words, these are not real Christians. This is from Earl Browder, General Secretary of the Communist Party USA, to students at Union Theological Seminary on April 15, 1935. This is from within this document. Mr. Matthews, not today, Mr. Congressman. They have taken over not only the Patriots and the Constitution, but also the Bible. Mr. Starnes, you do not mean to say that the Communist Party today is working in the churches? Mr. Matthews, well, I would boldly say that, on the basis of their very widespread appeal to the churches. Mr. Starnes, have you any statements by any leaders of the Communist Party or any documentary evidence that they are trying to infiltrate our churches? I have Earl Browder's book, Communism in the United States, which contains an address which he delivered, and it says you may be interested in knowing that we have preachers active in churches who are members of the Communist Party. So this is a well-known fact. And now we've already spoken about the communist... your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, it's right out of the Marxist game plan, right? That you infiltrate the organization, you bring it down from within. The history of the United States rooting out communism, of course, has a very bad reputation, a bad name nowadays because of all the people that they went after that probably had nothing to do with communism.
He was right. No, he was right. It was worse than they made out. The problem actually turned out to be far worse. I mean, if you look at, well, what was his name? What was the name of that senator that had the Inquisition that going?
Yeah, name's escaping me at the moment.
Yeah, me too. But he was right. He was not wrong. So I'll skip over this. We've already covered that. Now, notice this: communism and atheism, same root. So I'm going to try and rush through and try and see how far we get. But when the era of communist rule began in Russia in 1917, thanks, Nicholas. I'll keep going for a little bit. Religion was seen as a hindrance to a thriving socialist society, as we saw from his own writings. Karl Marx, the author of the Communist Manifesto, declared, "Communism begins where atheism begins." They're twins. communism and atheism are twins.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, my object in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. So those are two aims. So these atheists also want to dethrone God. And many of them are socialists. Therefore, they want to destroy capitalism. They want to destroy Western institutions, Western values. McCarthy, Senator McCarthy. No, he was 100% correct. McCarthy understated the problem. Yes, thank you, yeah. So now, remember, we've mentioned that, so we'll continue here. Now, this is Stalin, who was a Christian. This is from Stalin's era, I believe, and this is them throwing Jesus away because they want industry without God, science without God, and technology without God. Right? So, and notice they're active sympathizers in the United States. This goes way back, but believe me, these people were very, very active. Right? And now also the Soviet governments also, they had very active programs in atheism, right? Which are today carried out by the American Humanist Association and others. They are giving up the idea of immortality because they have the chance to lead happy and abundant lives on this earth. They no longer require the moral sanctions of Christianity. The principles of Marxism are providing them with an all-inclusive and integrated code of life. Do we know of a religion that's an all-inclusive and integrated way of life that we've might have spoken about on this channel, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I think we can think of one.
Yeah, and it unifies the whole country and also the individual. Oh, it's a religion that I know. It starts with an I. I can never think of the name. There's a guy called Muhammad that runs it. That's also a all-inclusive and integrated way of life. Yes, Islam. There's someone in the chat found it. So the anti-religious campaign has been successful, and also notice they had a union of militant atheists, known as also as the League of Militant Atheists. And of course, they killed people, they hurt people, they imprisoned people, they terrorized people, and I believe there was a guy called Richard Dawkins that said we need to organize as militant atheists. Wonder where Dawkins got that idea. Is he a communist? I gotta wonder. So, you see, its recruits are given systematic instruction in anti-religious theory, and so on and so on and so on. So these socialists, these atheists, all seem to have the same ideas. And notice, the secular humanist religion. Now, this is the World Religions Reader. And it provides...
Real quick,
yeah?
On that last slide, could you say that they are trained in Dawa?
Yes, they are. They are given systematic instruction in anti-religious theory, just as they are in other communist doctrines. They are Dawa trained. Yes. 100%. Thank you for that. Good catch. Good catch. I missed that one. Yes. Yeah.
And strangely, they tend to use the same arguments as the actual Dawa.
They do.
People, so.
Fascinating. I wonder if it comes from the same source. And notice now, this is a World Religions Reader. It's an encyclopedia. It's a comprehensive exploration of the teachings and beliefs of the world's living faiths. Oh, and the first one on the list is secular humanism. I thought it's not a religion. Okay.
Well, in name, maybe, although we're going to see that's not even true.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
In practice, it certainly is.
Okay, yeah. So now, notice, so humanism is considered religion, at least in the book, A World Religions Reader. Okay, secular humanism is on top of the list. It's number one. Now, humanist groups like the ACLU and other liberal groups, okay, they file lawsuits to stop students from praying in cafeterias and stop praying at sports games, and they sue. You can't sing Christmas carols. You cannot show gratitude to God because it's an anti-Christian religion, right? They want to remove religion from schools, Christianity from schools, right? And they're saying, no, we're just using reason. No. You're pushing your religion. Now, look, this is a different presentation I would have to get into to show the origins of socialism, right? And you will see it was founded as a religion. But I'm trying to give a general overview now. So, now humanists do argue that they do not force their beliefs on people. But notice Dr. Noble here. Humanists preach a faith every bit as dogmatic as Christianity. Moral relativism is foundational for secular humanist ethics. Spontaneous generation and evolution are basic to their biology. Naturalism is foundational to their philosophy, and atheism is their theological perspective. Now, here's an interesting thing that maybe you guys don't know. The US Supreme Court has validated the claim that humanism is a religion. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that humanism, and this was at their request, by the way. In 1961, the Supreme Court handed down the blah blah rulings decision regarding a Maryland notary public who was initially disqualified from office because he would not declare belief in God, because he wouldn't swear on the Bible, right? So what is his allegiance? Now we got to ask, what is his allegiance to? Satan? But the court ruled in his favor. It argued that theistic religions that believe in one God, could not be favored by the court over non-theistic religions. And then it added a footnote. The footnote written by Justice Hugo Black elaborates the point. Among religions in this country which do not teach what would generally be considered a belief in the existence of God are Buddhism, Taoism, ethical culture, secular humanism, and others. So secular humanism is a religion. It is legally considered a religion. Okay? So they're in an all-out campaign to eradicate Christianity in the favor of their religious humanism. They're enforcing a non-theistic state religion. They're not trying to be reasonable. They're enforcing their philosophy, their religious philosophy. Your thoughts, Thaddeus, before I go on?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it there. And Villainous said something similar, that it's not about, there being no religion in school. It's about replacing Christianity with humanism. Because the moral principles, if you want to call them that, of humanism are absolutely taught. And if you try to, say what is God's place in this or anything along those lines, even a very generic theism, that's not Christianity. It's like, you can't teach religion in school. You can only teach non-religion as a replacement for religion.
Except, let's continue.
Except, as we're demonstrating, it's really a religion. But as they would say,
exactly. You can only teach non-religion, reason. But actually, theirs is the religion of reason. Their worship of reason, right? The worship of themselves. Now notice, also this, that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves. The people. You must worship the people. Worship man in the image of man. Right? So understand, this is 2 Timothy 3, 1-4. Now, Romans also talks about Romans 1, 18-25. When men reject divinely revealed truth and cast off the restraints of the fear of Elohim and walking in his word, they turn to worshipping the creation. Animals, the earth, the universe. Well, you're going to destroy the earth. Go green, right? Instead of the creator, and end up worshipping their own bodies, sexual lust. The result is moral depravity, sexual perversion, and licentiousness. We saw that in the French Revolution, right? And they cannot discern between good and evil in their thinking. They lose judgment. Now, interesting. So, Romans 1, I'm not going to go into that now. I'm going to skip this for the moment and skip this slide, but let's have a look at the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Daniel Barker, Patrick blah, blah, blah. The government must treat atheism as favorably as theistic religion. What is true of atheism is equally true of humanism. And recognizing secular humanism as religion for First Amendment purposes, non-theistic ethical society qualified for tax exemption as a church. The name of that organization, the American Humanist Association. And treating humanism as a religion for Establishment Clause and Equal Protection Clause, and the prison department has violated both by refusing to recognize humanism, which is atheist, on the same terms as theistic faith, and recognizing that humanism is a religion for Establishment Clause and Equal Protection Clause purposes. The Supreme Court has held that secular humanism is a religion. Now, sadly, we know secular humanists. I've done shows with secular humanists, and it's a religion. It's not an...
Yeah.
Go on.
I agree completely with the court here that, especially secular humanism, but atheism in general as well, is just as much a religion as Christianity or any other religion. It's just a replacement. It has different beliefs, absolutely, but it has unsupported beliefs. It has a sense of social cohesion. It has, incentives to draw people in. It proselytizes. It does every single thing that a religion does, while declaring itself to not be a
one.
religion.
Yeah, so guys, I'm going to end in the next few minutes, so it's time to call it a day here. We've gone a bit longer than I anticipated, but let's have a quick look. This is the Humanist Manifesto. This is the American Humanist Association, good without a God, right? Advocating progressive values. Now, we've seen these progressive values. The French Revolution showed us those progressive values, and these socialist governments. Equality, for humanists, atheists, and free thinkers. There you go. Someone said earlier that they made themselves free thinkers. Let's have a look for the word religio, just a brief run through here. Notice they say here in their manifesto, religious humanism may be better understood, blah, blah. Religious humanism? Now, they have a lot of mentions of the word religious here, but they are religious humanists. Hold on, the American Humanist Association is admitting that they are religious humanists? My oh my, let's go to the eighth three. Religious humanism wants to realize human personality. Like, didn't Marx talk about how humans will be able to realize themselves in the communist realm? Thaddeus, do you remember something him saying like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, so notice religious looks like this is Marxist 101. Okay? That's so there you go. This is a religion. So now this has been replaced by Humanist Manifesto 3. Let's go to Humanist Manifesto 2. The word religion does appear quite often again. Religious, religious, religious. Notice many kinds of humanism exist, okay? The varieties and emphases of natural humanism include scientific humanism, and don't forget scientific socialism, because it's a science, ethical, democratic, religious, and Marxist humanism. Oh my god, they're openly admitting it. And okay, in the best sense, religion, they talk about religion all the time, but what is interesting is you want to look at this here. We, the undersigned, while not necessarily endorsing every detail of our own manifesto, we pledge our general support, except when we don't support it, and except when it's inconvenient. But these, for the future of mankind, we've got these vague ideas that we don't quite believe that we think are going to be great for you. These affirmations are not a final credo or dogma, but an expression of a living and growing faith. Fascinating, people. It's a faith. Let's have a look here. Those who signed the Humanist Manifesto disclaim that they are setting forth a binding credo. In other words, murder is bad today, but tomorrow we're changing our minds. Oh, yeah, we wanted to diddle your 3-year-old, but we think it's bad because people are watching, but tomorrow we might really change our mind, and we might pass a law that diddling your 3-year-old is legal because morals change, right? Society changes. This is not a binding credo. I agreed with it 5 minutes ago, but now I'm hungry and I'm going to steal your food. I'm going to steal your money because right now I'm hungry. I need some money and you got some. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, I do find it quite humorous that you're signing a statement that, the purpose of signing the statement is to say that you agree with what the statement says. And then one of the clauses of the statement is, we don't necessarily agree with what the statement says. So what was the point of having a statement to begin with? I don't know. Putting this in Islamic terms, it's like, these are the rules for the common Muslim. The scholars, we might have our own rules for ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my, there's the fellowship of religious humanists. Would someone please tell the humanists that there's humanists that are doing it wrong? Right? Yeah. So guys, so I'll end here. This is not the final slides, but yeah, there's more to this, but do understand that hopefully you've learned something new. Hopefully you've learned something interesting. This is a big data dump. I went further than I anticipated. But I'll leave it at that. Any last questions? And Thaddeus, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, I'll just conclude with the thought that, there are technically atheists who say that there is no such thing as moral principles and moral value and actually follow that up. But 90+% of atheists would put themselves in this humanist category, where they want to adhere to, for the most part, traditional moral values, while having no basis for them, having no intellectual basis, believing them with pure faith, if you will. And I've met many young people who are extremely, extremely passionate about their so-called moral values, their wokest agenda, if you want to put it differently, and it doesn't matter that there's no actual basis to this. It's not about reason. For most people who reject God, it's about rejecting the Christian moral precepts and replacing them with different moral precepts. It's not about being reasonable and rational, except when they want to make themselves feel better. They say, well, I am smarter than everyone else because I rejected Christianity. And then I replaced it with something that I have no basis to believe in.
Yeah. No, so guys, this is my first live run through of this material. There's a lot more of it. There's so much to be unpacked and uncovered here, but hopefully you can realize now there's a very strong relationship between Marx and communism. socialism, atheism, and irrationality. And we can see how this, we can start to see how this has played out through history, right? That it's immediately led to what we would term moral corruption. It's immediately led to licentiousness, debauchery, and yeah, it is violent, it is intolerant, and it preaches intolerance. If you read the writings of Percy Bysshe Shelley, I mean, I used to love his poetry when I was younger. I used to read his stuff. Now I realize the man was a complete out and out bigot. He was hateful. He was aggressive. He was angry. He hated the church. He was indoctrinated by hate preachers, right? Voltaire. I mean, these people all over the place. They don't have a clue. You got to read. Once you start reading their philosophies, these people are so insane and so contradictory. Just babbling insane people. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. He never returned his horse. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. There's more to come on this. Yeah.
If I may say something really quick, Lloyd recently enabled channel memberships. I definitely encourage you to join that if you are finding his material useful. I know that it's not for everyone, but it really does help a lot. Lloyd puts in countless hours into these. He's probably paid like 5 cents an hour or something to do this research. Clearly not about the money, but it definitely helps to have that financial support. So I encourage people to sign up for that. And also, Lloyd will be on my channel next weekend to look at racism in Islam. So we're not dropping Islam, we're just adding atheism as a additional subject that we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Actually, you know what? Maybe let me show you guys one bonus slide before I go. I'm just going to bring up. This is part of a presentation called Socialism and the Socialist Religion. Let me actually I'm just going to show you guys the raw slides right there. Thank you very much for that, Thaddeus. I much appreciate it. Let's just go here. Socialist religion to secular humanist religion. Okay. And you need to see this here. Okay. This is the origin of the socialist religion. Socialisme is a term coined in the 1820s. The idea is older than that, understand, but it's created by a French social theorist, one of the chief founders of socialism was originally called Christian socialism. It was a form of scientific Christianity. Okay? So, in his major work, Nouveau Christianisme, the New Christianity, he proclaimed a brotherhood of man, so everyone's equal, that must accompany the scientific organization of industry and society. So this was scientific Christianity, apparently. It was a new Christianity, right? And he wanted to abolish private property. I wonder where he got that idea. And he also created and inspired the science of sociology through a guy called Auguste Comte. So this is a guy called Claude Henry or Henry de Saint-Simon. Okay, Henry Saint-Simon. Now, what is fascinating about this guy, this fool here, let me just get this up here. Right, so he proposed that scientists take the place of priests in the social order. In other words, creating a technocracy. I'm still busy working on these slides, so they're not finally yet. And then, of course, he tried to kill himself because the guy wasn't exactly mentally stable. And this man had huge impact, okay? So he advocated that businessmen and other industrial leaders would control society. Does that sound familiar today? And notice this also happens to be the seed of fascism. It's on the left. Okay, and the spiritual direction of society would be in the hands of scientists. The scientists were the new priests, and they would take the place occupied by the Roman Catholic Church. It wasn't abolition of religion, it was replacement of religion with this new scientific religion, right? So an industrial state directed by modern science and would be organized for productive labor. In other words, you'd be a slave. And yeah, so this guy, notice in his best-known work, The New Christianity takes the form of religion concerned with the plight of the poor. The poor are just a political football. You didn't solve the problem of poverty, we're going to solve it. Christianity didn't solve poverty, we're going to solve it. Oh my God, they're still poor. Oh my God, the problem is not solved. We need more money. We need to solve this. We need to deal with the poor. And notice here, the term Christian socialism was then taken by these Brits in failed Britannia. The purpose was to vindicate for the kingdom of Christ its true authority over the realms of industry and trade, for socialism its true character as the great Christian revolution of the 19th century. This is crazy stuff. So yeah, so understand socialism started as a religion, a replacement for Christianity, and they were all atheists, and this guy was batshit crazy. Once you start learning about him, the man was nuts. But we'll get into that. Yeah. So Thaddeus, that's me. That's done. Thanks, guys. It's been a while. I've been very busy. There's a lot of work here, but yeah. Gab pay. Okay, that sounds interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, because YouTube gave me a little bit of grief, so I won't get into that. But yeah. Okay, Thaddeus. So thank you. Any final words, and then we are out of here.
No, just thank you everyone for joining today. If you have some feedback, please leave that in the chat. Obviously, this is the first time Lloyd's done this material, so whatever feedback you have, positive or negative, would be appreciated. Let us know what you want to see more of and what you've seen enough of.
Yeah, and it's true. Jesus said you will always have the pool with you. So yeah, guys. So look, there's a lot more. As I said, the first run through, and there is a wealth of material. We can look at the statistics on socialist governments versus Western democratic governments, and believe me, the murderous ones are the atheists. So, guys, thank you very much, and we will see you next time. I'm glad that the streaming worked well. Thank you, Villainous. Much appreciated. Right, guys. Yeah, leave your comments in the chat for those who'd like to sign up. This takes hours. You have no idea how many hours of work this is. But thank you, guys. Take care. Good night. Bye bye.
God bless.
God bless.